Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Modern humans, we've only been around for about 300,000 years. So what was happening on our planet before we showed up? Was it just empty? Or could there have been other advanced civilizations that came before us? Civilizations so ancient that all traces of them have been wiped away. This is the heart of the Silurian hypothesis, a fascinating scientific thought experiment proposed in 2018 by astrophysicist Adam Frank and climate scientist Gavin Schmidt. They asked a simple but mind-blowing question. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, would we even be able to tell? The hypothesis is named after the Silurian period, a time over 400 million years ago when life was thriving in Earth's oceans. But the name is also a nod to Doctor Who, where the Silurians are an ancient reptilian species. It's a clever way to frame the idea, but the science behind it is serious. So, if there were advanced civilizations before us, where are all the ruins, the tools, the skyscrapers? Well, that's the thing. Earth is a master at recycling itself. Our planet is constantly changing. Mountains rise and fall, oceans become deserts, and entire continents shift over millions of years. Processes like plate tectonics, erosion, and volcanic activity are like nature's cleanup crew. Think about it. If humanity disappeared today, how long would it take for all traces of our civilization to vanish? Scientists estimate that within a few million years, even our toughest structures, like skyscrapers and nuclear waste sites, would be ground into dust and scattered across the planet. So, if our civilization can disappear so completely, what chance do we have of finding evidence of one that existed hundreds of millions of years ago? This is where Frank and Schmidt's idea gets really interesting. Instead of looking for physical evidence, they proposed searching for chemical fingerprints in Earth's geological record. For example, carbon isotopes. Burning fossil fuels changes the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13. If an ancient civilization used industrial processes, we might find these anomalies in ancient rock layers. Nitrogen levels. Synthetic fertilizers could leave behind unusual amounts of nitrogen-15. Radioactive isotopes. If they used nuclear technology, we might find traces of plutonium-24 or iodine-129. Elements that don't occur naturally in large amounts. But here's the catch. Natural processes can also produce similar chemical signatures. For example, massive volcanic eruptions can release huge amounts of carbon dioxide, altering isotope ratios. So, how do we tell the difference? One of the key pieces of evidence Frank and Schmidt looked at was the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, PETM, a period about 56 million years ago when Earth's temperature spiked by 5 to 8 degrees C. This event released a massive amount of carbon into the atmosphere, similar to what humans are doing today. Could this have been caused by an ancient industrial civilization? It's a fascinating idea, but most scientists aren't convinced. The PETM was likely caused by natural processes, like volcanic activity or the release of methane from ocean floors. Plus, the rate of carbon release during the PETM was much slower than what we see today. So, if the PETM wasn't caused by ancient factories, what other clues could point to a lost civilization? Some researchers have suggested that dinosaurs might have been more advanced than we think. Take the Troodon, for example. This small bird-like dinosaur had a large brain relative to its body size, binocular vision, and grasping hands, traits that suggest it could have been capable of complex behavior. Paleontologist Dale Russell even speculated that if dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct, Troodons might have evolved into intelligent, human-like creatures he called dinosauroids. But let's be real, even the smartest dinosaurs were probably nowhere near building cities or launching rockets. So, what about something even stranger, like a civilization based on fungi? In 2000, a Japanese biologist named Toshituki Nakagaki conducted an experiment that blew everyone's minds. He placed a slime mold in a maze with a sugar cube at the end. Within hours, the mold figured out the shortest path to the sugar without a brain. This raises a wild question. Could fungi or other simple organisms have formed some kind of ancient intelligent network? If so, their civilization would leave behind no physical traces, just subtle chemical clues. Of course, not everyone is on board with the Silurian hypothesis. Critics point out that there's no direct evidence, no tools, no buildings, no artifacts. All the proposed chemical traces could be explained by natural processes. Evolution makes it unlikely that any species before humans could have developed advanced technology. So, was there an ancient civilization before us? The answer is, we don't know. But the Silurian hypothesis isn't really about proving the existence of lizard people or dinosaur engineers. It's about challenging our assumptions and asking, what don't we know about Earth's history? And who knows, maybe one day we'll discover a clue that changes everything.
In February 1961, 3 adventurous rock lovers were searching for geodes near Olancha, California. They took one of their findings home and studied it because it looked pretty unusual. They managed to cut through the matrix and discovered something unexpected inside. Instead of the usual mineral formations, it had a cylindrical object resembling porcelain inside. There was a metal shaft at its center, and around it, a hexagonal sheath made of copper and some unidentified substance. Its discoverers were hoping they had found an example of some unknown technology from 500,000 years ago. It could be proof that there was a hyper-advanced ancient civilization like Atlantis, or that time travel was real. Maybe someone came all the way from the future and accidentally dropped the item. Or maybe some intelligent extraterrestrial beings brought it when visiting Earth. If any of these theories were true, it would mean that scientists have to completely rewrite all human history as we know it. But not everyone shared the excitement, and truth seekers and alternative archaeology circles were trying to solve the mystery of the so-called Koso artifact until the late 90s with theories and debates. Then a group of skeptics took images and x-rays of the discovery and showed them to spark plug collectors. They have identified the artifact as a spark plug with corroded metal components from the 1920s and not ancient technology at all. Almost 20 years later, one of the co-discoverers of the artifact agreed to take it for inspection at the University of Washington. They officially confirmed it was a 1920s-era champion spark plug. And the stone matrix containing the artifact wasn't a geode, but a concretion. Those can form because of natural processes over decades or years, but not millennia. The Koso artifact is a good example of an out-of-place artifact, which is a thing in pseudo-archaeology. It's something found in a place or time where it shouldn't logically be. These artifacts seem too advanced for the time period they're found in. They could also mean human activity existed when humans weren't supposed to be around. The Baghdad Battery is another example of such an artifact. It was found in the 1930s by a German archaeologist and consists of a clay jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod going through the jar's stopper. Its top, which was broken off, probably had been sealed with asphalt. Its discoverer noticed that it had 2 different metals and possibly an electrolyte, which are key components of a battery. There are no ancient writings to support this theory, but when scientists ran tests and filled it with an ionic solution like vinegar or wine, it showed that it could conduct electricity. If it really was a battery from 2,000 years ago, it might have been used in ancient medical practices, or even embedded in statues to make it look like they were buzzing to impress people. Kionich, who found it, believed it was used for electroplating, a process for coating metals. Even if it was used as a battery, the Baghdad artifact could only produce a small amount of energy, around 1 volt of electricity. So, some people believe it was used as a storage container for sacred scrolls. Back in the 1930s, a couple stumbled upon something strange while walking along Red Creek in London, Texas. It was a piece of wood sticking out of what looked like an ancient rock formation. Around a decade later, their son, who was really curious to find out its secret, decided to crack open the rock and found a surprisingly modern hammer inside. This discovery caught the attention of Carl Baugh, a young Earth creationist who claimed the rock surrounding the hammer dated back to the Cretaceous period. He saw it as evidence against evolutionary theory. After some investigation, scientists proved that the rock was not as ancient as it seemed. Geological processes have just encased the modern hammer over time, so it wasn't evidence of humans coexisting with dinosaurs like the Flintstones, as some hoped. It was just a case of a miner dropping his hammer centuries ago and nature doing its thing. A Chinese archaeologist supposedly stumbled upon some caves that seemed to serve as a burial ground for small beings with big, oval heads. Alongside these remains, there was rock art depicting figures with round helmets, the sun, the moon, the earth, and stars connected by groups of pea-sized dots. They also found over 700 mysterious stone discs etched with spiral grooves. Things got even weirder when these discs were sent to a Chinese professor who claimed the grooves were actually written characters. According to his translation, the discs told the tale of Dropa visitors from another planet who had crashed their spaceship on Earth about 12,000 years ago and had tried to live among us until they were hunted down by locals. But there's no concrete evidence that any of this actually happened. The story was first published back in the 1960s in a couple of articles, but it all seemed a bit fishy. None of the people involved, the archaeologist, the professor, or even the university they supposedly worked at, seemed to have left any trace in the records. And while there is a group in Tibet called the Dropka, they're fully human, not extraterrestrial visitors, and there's no solid proof that the Dropa stones exist at all. In a remote part of China, there are some bizarre pipe-like formations known as the Beigan Pipes. A local explorer found them back in 1996, protruding from Mount Beigan and along the shores of Tosan Lake nearby. Some people thought they were the work of ancient guests from other planets. When samples of the pipe material were tested, they contained mostly common minerals, but there was a mysterious 8% of unknown stuff. Special testing revealed that these pipes had been there before humans. Chinese geologists later visited the site and suggested that these pipes were formed naturally over time. It could be sediment piling up in the fissures in the earth, or even fossilized tree roots from the area's lush past, but it's not certain. There's a mysterious terracotta head in Mexico with a hard-to-pronounce name, discovered back in the 1930s during a burial excavation. This head looked a lot like fancy Roman statues, so it wasn't clear what it was doing in Mexico. For some reason, the discoverer kept it secret for several decades. The head was found in a pyramid with 3 floors about 40 miles from Mexico City, alongside gold, copper, and pottery. Some argue that if this head really is many centuries old, it could mean the Romans or some other civilization had made it to Mesoamerica before Columbus did. There are also drift voyage theories mentioning a shipwreck after which some artifacts and survivors made it ashore. Some suggest that this figurine head was a little souvenir brought over by the Vikings. But there's no solid archaeological proof of the Vikings meeting the folks in Mesoamerica. There are some artifacts floating around, but none of them have been stamped as undeniable evidence of pre-Columbian contact, so the mystery of how this head ended up where it did remains unsolved. While digging a trench along a river in Romania, workers found a wedge, which is now famous as the aluminum wedge of Ajud, or the object of Ajud. Right next to it, there were some mastodon bones. Those distant relatives of elephants lived 11,000 years ago, so the wedge is probably of the same age. The cool part is that it's made of aluminum, a metal not even discovered until the 1800s. This material requires serious heat to produce. The wedge is also covered in a thick layer of oxide that's been sitting there for hundreds of years. Some folks believe this wedge must have crash-landed here on a spacecraft from some other planet. Some scientists think it's all a hoax, and others suppose it might be a human-made object with an unknown purpose. When you think of super pricey colors, gold, silver, and purple probably come to mind. But back in Pompeii, blue was the real showstopper. Known as Egyptian blue and later renamed Pompeian blue, this color was total luxury, glamorously coating walls in ancient Egypt as far back as 2500 BCE. And in Pompeii, the demand was so high that blue could cost more than even the ridiculously expensive purple. Finding a blue artifact from Pompeii is not easy, let alone a whole room. But in May 2024, archaeologists finally uncovered a completely blue room filled with murals. featuring female figures and symbols of the four seasons.
Oh wow, this is the Blue Room?
This gem was actually discovered ages ago during the Bourbon era, but it took until recently to finish a full excavation. The Blue Room isn't huge, about 86 square feet, but don't forget that vibrant blue is rare for Pompeian frescoes, usually saved for the fanciest spots. Experts think this room may have been a sanctuary for rituals or sacred stuff. Among the finds were bronze jugs, lamps, and 15 hefty amphorae. Amphorae were the Tupperware of ancient Rome, perfect for transporting liquids like olive oil, beverages, or garum, an infamous fermented fish sauce that Romans couldn't get enough of. Their tapered design meant they had to either stand on a rack or be buried in the ground, but that shape made shipping them really efficient. Also, the archaeologists found there were building materials for renovations and a ridiculous number of empty oyster shells. While you might think this room hosted some fancy shindigs with oysters and gallons of beverages in those amphoras, in reality, the shells weren't even leftovers from a posh dinner party. Instead, experts believe they were ground up to mix with plaster and mortar. The next find was unearthed around 2 decades ago, but the scientists only realized it in 2024. They had dug up the oldest cheese ever, clocking in at a whopping 3,600 years. The previous record holder was only 3,200 years old, found in an Egyptian tomb of some big shot named Thutmose. When they discovered that younger cheese, they found broken jars with this solid, whitish mass inside. It took some serious sleuthing to confirm it was cheese and not some ancient science experiment gone wrong. But let's go back to this 3,600-year-old cheese. It wasn't just sitting around like any old lump. It was actually a fashion statement. It was found in the tomb with the mummy of a young woman from northwestern China. She had the cheese hanging around her neck like some sort of dairy bling. Now let's talk taste. When experts were asked if they'd try the cheese, their answer was a swift no way. So basically, nobody's diving in to find out if it's pungent or not. But thanks to some fancy tech, they can analyze flavors. But even if they had dared to try, I bet it's nothing to write home about since it's as hard as rock now. Scientists figured out this cheese was likely kefir cheese, made from fermenting milk with kefir grains and had both goat and cow milk in it. Funny enough, the ladies whose tomb it was found in belonged to the Shi'auha people, who were probably lactose intolerant. But don't fret. Despite their limited plant options, they could still enjoy cheese since this kefir delicacy had surprisingly low lactose levels. Remember when everything felt brighter? The grass greener, people friendlier, and trees looking regal? Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating about the grass and the folks, but not the trees. In 2024, some ancient plant fossils from New Brunswick, Canada, are making waves. They uncovered Sanfordiaculus densifolia, a tree over 350 million years old. It sported a trunk, flaunting over 250 massive leaves, some up to 5 feet long. Instead of a classic crown, it had a bottle brush appearance on a slim trunk just 6.3 inches wide. It's like this tree went to the gym and skipped leg day for leaf gains. Typically, ancient trees are depicted as basic trunks, but this one is a real standout. It's somewhat similar to today's ferns and palms, though palms came later. These fossils are well preserved, buried in an ancient fault lake after an earthquake. While many might just think, cool tree, scientists are excited. This discovery helps them piece together our planet's evolution over millions of years. I get it, those blue rooms, ancient cheese, and trees aren't exactly inspiring much hope for the future. But I've got something that might just change the game. In 2024, scientists discovered a new theoretically habitable planet called Gliese 12b. It's a bit smaller than Earth, but bigger than Venus, and is orbiting a mellow red dwarf star about 40 light-years away in the Pisces constellation. This star is just 27% the size of our Sun, and 60% as hot. which puts Gliese 12b in the Goldilocks zone, where liquid water could actually exist, even with its speedy 12.8-day orbit. If it's got no atmosphere, the surface temperature is about 107 degrees Fahrenheit, so if you're used to Arizona summers, you'll be just fine. The only problem is that Gliese 12b is 12 parsecs away, and sec here doesn't mean a quick second. With our fastest spacecraft, a trip would take around 225,000 years. To put it in perspective, if we imagine a regular human lifespan of 100 years, which is already slightly exaggerated, it will take about 2,250 generations to get there. Still, it's nice to know we have Gliese 12b on deck in case things go south here on Earth. And even if we never actually get there, studying it with the James Webb Space Telescope might help unravel the mystery of why Earth stayed livable while Venus didn't. Archaeologists in Egypt have made an exciting discovery. They found the upper half of a huge statue of Ramses II. This 12.5-foot limestone piece was uncovered in Hermopolis, now Ashmunain, and it lines up perfectly with the lower part found in 1930. It took almost 100 years to finish the puzzle. The statue shows Ramses seated, wearing a crown and a headdress with a cobra, symbolizing his rule over both Upper and Lower Egypt. The back of the statue is covered in hieroglyphs, listing the king's numerous titles, highlighting his status as one of ancient Egypt's most powerful pharaohs. Combining the upper and lower pieces would create a statue nearly 23 feet tall. You probably know the Statue of Liberty was a French gift, but did you know that the famous Venetian lions were actually made in China and not Italy? Back in 1295, Marco Polo returned to Venice from a place called Cathay, we now know it as China, and shared some wild stories about everything from paper money to coal and even Kublai Khan's swanky palace in Xanadu. While some people back then rolled their eyes at his tales, modern scholars are still raising their eyebrows a bit. Despite the skepticism, Polo is a key figure connecting Europe to ancient China. Now, some recent research suggests Venice and China were already well connected before Polo's trip. A prime example? The Bronze Lion of Venice in St. Mark's Square. Researchers from the University of Padua believe that it actually came from Chinese copper around the lower Yangtze River more than 3,000 years ago, all due to a chemical analysis they ran in 2024. The winged lion became Venice's symbol between 1261 and 1264, probably even before Polo's adventures. Experts point out its resemblance to the Tang Dynasty tomb guardians, which hint it might have had a makeover on its way to Venice. 2024 is not only the year of scientific discoveries, but also the treasure hunt year. A 2-foot-tall bronze statue of the Greek deity Diana, once a fixture on the Titanic's fireplace mantle, was discovered during a recent underwater expedition. Discovering this statue was like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is 2.5 miles deep in the ocean. It's just one of the many art pieces maritime archaeologists have been looking for among the Titanic's wreckage. It was more than just a luxury liner. It was filled with art treasures, from a 1912 Renault to this stunning statue inspired by a piece at the Louvre.
At some point in its long and very interesting history, our dear planet Earth was sort of snoozing, just doing its planetary thing, spinning around the sun. And then, bam, life starts getting fancy. Plants and animals start strutting their stuff, showing off their complexity. Fast forward a bit, about 65 million years ago to be exact, and a cosmic disaster strikes, or at least that's what we presume. An asteroid probably smashed into Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and other big animals. We can't pinpoint specifics about the asteroid, but we do know that it was extremely large and it crashed into our precious planet, creating a dusty mess that settled everywhere. You can still find remnants of that dust layer in sedimentary rocks today. If you dig beneath it, you'll uncover a whole bunch of fossils. These prehistoric creatures were living it up before the asteroid crashed the party. Think of it as the planet going on a cleaning spree, leaving a bunch of empty spaces waiting to be filled. And guess who took the opportunity? Mammals. These furry little critters were the ones to rise to fame. But why is it that this disaster became such a great opportunity for mammals? It's pretty simple, actually. With no big bullies around, they grew, multiplied, and had a population expanse. All kinds of mammals joined to fill in the blanks. Primates, rodents, basically, the whole furry gang. We're talking about placental mammals, marsupials, and even egg-laying mammals, adding some serious variety to the mix. We like to think of primates as our closest relatives here on Earth. What's their story? Well, around 63 million years ago, just a couple of million years after the dinosaurs' final dance, the primates decided it was time for a family reunion. They split into two groups, the dry-nosed primates, who became the cool monkeys and apes we know today, and the wet-nosed primates, who went off to become lemurs and aye-ayes, hey-hays. The fun didn't stop there. About 58 million years ago, the dry-nosed primates began their own little mission. One special guest called the tarsier, arrived on the scene, featuring big eyes that were perfect for late-night shenanigans. This tarsier took a different path from its primate relatives, embracing its unique niche and evolving separately. To this day, the tarsier is the only primate that feeds exclusively on meat. These little guys have a taste for insects, small birds, rodents, and even lizards. But that's not all that makes them unique. Their eyes are twice the size of their brains. Also, their heads can do a full 180-degree spin, just like an owl. Because of their features, the tarsiers are the true kings and queens of the night. With their superpower of ultrasonic tracking, they can spot their prey instantly. Plus, their legs and feet are like springs ready to launch them into action. They've got this special ankle bone called the tarsus, which gives them those epic leaping skills. Hence the name, if you were wondering. But let's leave these little critters to rest and get back to our story, shall we? About 55 million years ago, the Earth cranked up the heat, literally. This sudden hot pod was a bit too much for many deep ocean dwellers and plants to handle, and they bid their farewells. But hey, every goodbye is an opportunity for something new, right? The oceanic mammals known as cetaceans, saw their chance and took it. They splashed into those empty niches, becoming the rulers of the sea. In this category of creatures, you can find the blue whale and the dolphin. A special primate guest made an appearance around 47 million years ago. Scientists now affectionately call the fossil of such a creature Ida. This little wonder caused quite a stir. Initially hailed as the missing link in human evolution. But here's the hilarious part. It turned out Ida was not one of us dry-nosed primates, but a cheeky wet-nosed one. Moving forward to 40 million years ago. This is when another big event happened in the primate world. The New World monkeys, our distant cousins, decided to take a different path and branch off from our lineage of Old World monkeys. They packed their bags and set off to conquer South America, where they're still living it up today. What's the difference between the two, you might ask? Well, one crucial thing that sets them apart is the fact that the Old World monkeys had nostrils that pointed downwards. Around 25 million years ago, another troop of apes entered the scene, and these guys had something special, the lack of a tail. These unique creatures would go on to become our closest relatives. We're talking apes and great apes, the cool gang who share a whole lot of genetic similarities with us. The first ape to break free from the monkey madness was the gibbon. About 18 million years ago is when this little acrobat swung into the picture. A few million years later, the great apes made their grand entrance too. Orangutans were the pioneers, venturing into the wilds of southern Asia. We're getting closer and closer to the present. It was 7 million years ago when the great apes took a major fork in the evolutionary road. One path led to our ancestors, the future Homo sapiens, and the other path led to chimpanzees and bonobos. These two primate branches remained united for a few million years before finally going their separate ways. 5.6 million years ago, a game-changing ape called Ardipithecus made its way into our evolutionary history. It had a special talent, bipedalism. That's right, this was one of the first apes to walk on 2 feet, probably making its primate buddies raise an eyebrow or two. The real showstoppers, however, arrived around 4 million years ago, the Australopithecus crew. These were the earliest members of the Hominina Hominina subtribe, our tribe. What made them so special? Well, probably the fact that they brought some serious tools to the game. Stone tools, to be precise. It seems that at some point in their evolution, these clever primates started using stones to make their lives easier. Now here comes a crucial turning point in our story. About 2 million years ago, our ancestors faced a food shortage. Survival of the fittest was the name of the game, and 2 strategies emerged. Group 1 went for stronger jaws, allowing them to chomp on tough foods like nuts. Group 2 had a different idea. They opted for weaker jaws, but bigger brains. They wanted access to a wider range of food options. Obviously, the bigger-brained group took the prize. And here's where our gang comes into play. Around 2.5 million years ago, a type of primate also known as handyman made its mark on history. These clever beings had larger brains and knew how to put those neurons to good use. About 1.9 million years ago, a new star emerged, Homo erectus. These creatures not only walked upright, but also had brains that were almost twice the size of the handyman's. They took the world by surprise, becoming the first of our direct ancestors to venture out of the African continent. They even knew how to tame fire. Approximately 700,000 years ago, the world witnessed a culinary revolution. The earliest evidence of cooking appeared. And around 500,000 years ago, our ancestors decided it was time to become a bit more fashionable, donning the first evidence of clothing. Our very own species came to be just 300,000 years ago. Told you we were late to the party. But the world was never the same after the appearance of Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern humans. Alongside our other relatives, we emerged, ready to conquer the world with our innovative minds and complex societies. The exact path of our evolution remains a bit of a mystery. But what we do know for sure is that Neanderthals joined the party around at some point too. As Homo sapiens flourished, so did our capacity for language. Modern speech is believed to have emerged almost hand in hand with our species. We started expressing ourselves, sharing stories, and shaping the world with our words. So, there you have it. It took 13.8 billion years of cosmic history for humans to make their entrance. Think about it. 99.998% of the time since the Big Bang, we weren't even around. Our species, Homo sapiens, is the toddler of the Earth's family, existing for just the tiniest fraction of the universe's timeline. Yet, in this blink of an eye, we've managed to unravel the entire story that led to our existence. The story won't end with us. It's an ongoing saga, still being written with every passing moment.
Now, have you ever seen cricket balls that are 3 billion years old? Klerksdorp spheres were found in deposits of the mineral pyrophyllite in South Africa and rock the science world. They do look like tiny ancient cricket balls with seams-like lines around the middle. Back in the 1980s, some folks claimed these spheres had been made by an advanced pre-flood civilization we know nothing about. One museum curator shared stories about how they rotated on their own in a display case. There was also a TV show that invited a psychic who declared the spheres were pieces of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these spheres are actually pretty common concretions or spherical objects formed by different minerals than the surrounding rock. The seam-like lines are just imprints from the host rock's layers building up over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from noticeably flattened spheres to distinct disks. As for that episode when one of these spheres spun on its own, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum cleared that up too. He said that when he put one sphere on its glass shelf when a journalist came to visit, the sphere naturally rotated a bit because it's round. The area where the museum is located often experiences earth tremors from gold mining activities nearby. The oldest known human-like footprints could be 6 million years old. They were found on the Greek island of Crete in 2002. If the number is correct, it would mean that early human ancestors may have migrated between Europe and Africa much earlier than we previously thought. This doesn't mean Africa is not the cradle of humankind, though. It could just prove that early human ancestors moved back and forth between continents. Some researchers believe the footprints were left by a bipedal creature possibly related to an early human ancestor nicknamed El Greco. According to scientists who studied them, the footprints have a very human-like shape, with 5 toes and a parallel big toe. Some scientists are skeptical about it and suggest the prints might be from a late European ape. The new study analyzed fossilized marine microorganisms found in the sedimentary rocks to determine the footprint's age and prove it's actually 6 million years. The next amazing find that keeps scientists entertained is the Dorchester pot. It's a beautifully crafted metal vessel with some fancy geometric designs embossed in shiny silver. The pot was discovered in, who could have thought, Dorchester in 1852 under quite unusual circumstances. During a powerful blast, the pot broke into 2 pieces. Scientists believe it was originally embedded within a rock or boulder known as pudding stone. The rock from which the Dorchester pot emerged is dated to be around 500 million years old. So it could mean the pot itself is also that old. The current and less exciting theory suggests that the Dorchester pot is a Victorian-era candlestick holder. Such things were really trending back then, so it's not a surprise to find such fancy household item from that time. The Dorchester pot falls into the category of ooparts, or out-of-place artifacts. Those are objects that seem too advanced for the time period they're supposedly from. If we accept that the pot is 500 million years old, then whoever made it was way ahead of their times in terms of crafts and tech. One extra mystery is that the pot has an engraving of a plant that most likely disappeared from Earth over 100,000 years ago. Sounds like good proof the pot is really extra old. Now, it looks like the oldest map in Europe is a stone from 4,000 years ago. This Bronze Age slab was found in France in the year 1900 at an ancient burial ground. The carvings on the slab show in 3 dimensions the River Odey network with a fantastic accuracy of around 80% over an 18-mile stretch. There are other stone-carved maps around the world, but this one is unique because it shows a specific area to scale. Looks like the slab's carvings don't just map rivers and hills, but also settlements, barrow sites, and field systems. Archaeologists say the slab wasn't used for navigation, but rather to symbolize power. The detailed markings on the slab might have served to illustrate the domain of a local ruler, possibly a prince or king, to show their control over the territory. When the ruler lost power, the slab was likely repurposed as part of a burial vault. The unique artifact was stored in the cellar of a museum. For decades, no one even noticed until several scholars read older reports about the slab and decided to check it out. They conducted a detailed analysis using 3D techniques. Their research proved that the creators of the slab had not only etched lines into the rock, but also modified its surface to reflect the topography of the landscape with high accuracy. The Salzburg Cube, also known as the Wolf's Egg Iron, was discovered in the late 19th century in Austria. Now, don't let the name mislead you. It doesn't look like a cube at all. It's more like a rounded object with 2 flat sides. Down the middle, there's a groove, and the surface is covered with pits and craters. This unique appearance is the reason why many people think it might be something out of this world. Workers accidentally found this artifact when they blew apart a piece of coal. The coal seam it came from is thought to be over 60 million years old. The Salzburg Cube moved between museums, mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century, and then showed up again. A professor from Bonn University suggested it might be from a meteor, but they found no evidence of elements that you'd normally see in meteorites, like cobalt or nickel. Then researchers thought it must be a human-made object, possibly a Victorian-era candlestick holder. No one knows the true story of the cube or its current location. Yep, it disappeared again. Have you heard about the Meister print? It's a fossilized sandal print discovered in 1968, and it has sparked a lot of intrigue. There's a trilobite inside the print, which supposedly went extinct around 500 million years before humans even existed. But many historians think this age is an exaggeration. When Meister found the fossil, it was authenticated. But the scientist who did it didn't confirm it was a human sandal print. He only agreed there was a trilobite there. When another scientist visited the site, he found a 6-inch impression he believed was from a child's moccasin. But the footwear seemed to be new. So, could it be evidence of time travel? Proof that humans existed millions of years earlier than we thought? Or a sign that someone else visited early Earth? Or is it just a rock formation that looks like a sandal print? We still don't have the answers. Back in June 1936, a couple was walking along Red Creek in London, Texas. London, Texas? Yeah, when they stumbled upon something unusual. It was a piece of wood sticking out of what seemed to be an ancient rock formation. About 10 years later, their curious son decided to crack open the rock to see what was inside. And he saw a hammer, which looked surprisingly modern. Then, one unique finds enthusiast decided that the rock encasing the hammer was from the Cretaceous period. This would mean that someone dropped a 19th century hammer while dinosaurs like Triceratops were still roaming the Earth. So, if this hammer was truly from the Cretaceous period, then the whole evolutionary theory would be wrong. And if the hammer was modern, it would mean the Cretaceous rock formation it came from was much younger than we thought. But the real answer was much simpler. The hammer was indeed modern, and geological processes had encased it in rock. Minerals can harden around an object in a relatively short time. So the hammer was probably dropped by a miner a century or so ago, and the rock formed around it afterward. And no, it wasn't a Victorian-era candlestick holder either.
On October 30th, 1759, the inhabitants of the Middle East were jolted awake by an earthquake. Cracks appeared in the walls of their homes, roofs began to crumble. People ran out of their homes and gathered in open areas. But because of strong shocks, they kept losing their footing and falling. A month later, there was another earthquake, but it turned out to be even stronger. Trees broke, houses collapsed, deep cracks appeared in the ground. The disaster lasted for 2 minutes. Oases, roads, and cities were destroyed. Incredibly, Baalbek's ancient buildings withstood earthquakes. Some historians state that this majestic and mysterious place was built during the Roman Empire, but many researchers disagree. Whatever the truth is, the city is one of the main archaeological phenomena of humankind. The most amazing building of Baalbek is the Temple of Jupiter. The inhabitants of the Roman Empire believed that Jupiter held power over lightning and thunder. The building looked like a platform with 54 columns. A massive roof rested on these columns. Today, you can only see 6 70-foot-high columns. Each of them consists of 3 sections and resembles a pencil. The cores of these pencils were made of lead. This made the columns exceptionally strong. Each of these pieces of stone weighed an incredible 80 tons. That's the weight of 35 Ford Explorer SUVs. Look, this is the largest block in the Great Pyramid of Giza. But compared to the blocks from Baalbek, it doesn't even look that impressive. The foundation under the Temple of Jupiter was preserved. That's how specialists figured out it consisted of about 25 monolithic stones, weighing 450 tons each. It means that the blocks from Baalbek weigh almost 4 times more than the blocks from Egypt. There are 3 more enormous limestone blocks in the foundation. They weigh 800 tons each. This is more than twice the weight of a Boeing 747 plane. Ancient builders must have had a hard time carving such giants from a piece of stone. And after that, they also had to pull them to the construction site and lift them to a significant height. Repeating these logistics would probably turn out to be a nightmare for present-day builders. To do this amount of work, they would need modern equipment. But Baalbek's constructors didn't have trucks, cranes with circular saws, or electricity. How did the builders of the past manage to do this? Scientists have a theory that includes ropes, winches, and lever systems. Naturally, the engineers of the past made all the gadgets from wood. Around 3,000 feet away from the ruins of the temple complex, there's a quarry. Archaeologists suppose that's where the stones for the construction were cut. They found a block of limestone there. It seemed to be too large, even for this incredible place. The monolith got called the Stone of the South. It was 65 feet long and 13 feet wide. The ancient builders didn't have time to completely separate it from its mother rock. A group of scientists from Austria estimated that this piece of limestone weighed more than 1,000 tons. That's like 3 Boeing aircraft or 160 African elephants. There was another surprise awaiting the archaeologists near the Stone of the South. It was the second monolith that weighed more than 1,200 tons. But the ancient builders didn't stop at that. They continued to work. In 2014, in the same quarry, German archaeologists unearthed a block that weighed 1,650 tons. No one has figured out yet why people of the past needed a piece of stone that weighed as much as 125 school buses. It's also unclear how they were going to move this giant and why they didn't finish the job. In any case, this third monolith is the largest processed piece of stone in human history. There are more questions than answers. Some researchers believe that people of the past had high-tech equipment. Others don't think so, but are eager to understand how the builders managed to move those stones. There's a huge number of ancient buildings and artifacts on the planet. Lots of them make researchers scratch their heads. Near the Pyramid of Djoser in Egypt, archaeologists have found a network of tunnels. This place is called Serapeum. It contains 24 sarcophagi weighing from 70 to 100 tons. The giant boxes are carved from a single piece of granite and covered with heavy lids. The sarcophagi are perfectly symmetrical. To the touch, their walls are as smooth as glass. Even with the current level of technology, this is very difficult to do. But the ancient Egyptians managed this feat. The Lycurgus cup is a priceless artifact and example of ancient nanotechnology. It's made of glass that can change its color. If you put a source of light in front of the cup, it turns green. If the light is behind the goblet, it becomes deep red. In this case, the figure of Greek king Lycurgus turns pale purple. Scientists understood how this color change worked only at the end of the 20th century. Through microscopes, they saw nanoparticles of silver, gold, and copper. They had been added to the glass matrix. Thanks to this, you can observe a color change called dichroism. Interestingly, the gold and silver were grounded into a fine dust. It's almost impossible to do this by accident. Most likely, the ancient experts knew for sure what they were doing. Bolivia has a curious place called Puma Punku. It looks as if an ancient giant played there with an enormous construction set. And after the game, they forgot to put the pieces back into the box. But there are no giants, and the huge stone blocks were carved by ancient builders over 1,500 years ago. Some of the rocks weigh 100 tons. The blocks were brought to an altitude of almost 13,000 feet above sea level from the quarry 60 miles away from the construction site. There's no forest in that area. This means the builders couldn't use trees to make wooden rollers. The monument belongs to the Inca civilization. Scientists are sure they didn't know anything about wheels. In 1992, the inhabitants of a Chinese village decided to drain a pond. Their ancestors had been using it to wash clothes and catch fish for hundreds of years. They kept pumping the water out for 17 days. At the bottom of the reservoir, they made an unexpected discovery. The villagers saw an entrance to a cave going down to a depth of 100 feet. The incredible find was named the Longyu Caves. Unknown builders carved out 320,000 square feet of galleries. There are separate rooms, bridges, pools, and columns that support the ceiling. The walls of the cave are covered with strange carved lines and patterns. Scientists haven't found any information about who built the caves and why they did it. The construction technology also remains a mystery. Antonio Stradivari lived in Italy in the 18th century. He created musical instruments. More than 600 of his works have survived to this day. 500 of them are violins. One of the instruments was sold at auction for $16 million. The violins made by this master sound clear and deep. Researchers can't understand why Stradivarius instruments produce such unique sounds. Perhaps it's all about the varnish the master used to cover the violins. The answer may also lie in the wood the instruments are made of. In those days, Europe had a cold climate. Because of this, the wood became denser, and the instruments made of it sounded especially pleasing to the ear. In the Indian city of Delhi, there's a 23-foot-high pole. It weighs 6.5 tons and is made of 98% wrought iron. The 1,600-year-old pillar has no signs of rust or decay. Scientists believe that the monument is so well preserved thanks to the dry weather and the chemical composition of the metal. It might be resistant to corrosion. And still, researchers don't know how the blacksmiths managed to make an iron pillar that's not afraid of rust. It seems like a tough feat, even for modern metallurgists. The Al-Nasla rock is divided into 2 parts by a perfectly straight slit. Each boulder stands on a small pedestal. Some people believe this is the evidence of ancient laser technology. But geologists think the split happened due to the ground shifting or natural vibrations that occurred under the rock. This process led to the appearance of the crack. It had been deepening for thousands of years, and gradually, the natural monument took the form you can see today.
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop Brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabi people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on tray goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world. And it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
You know, scientists make discoveries that change the world, but even they can face mysteries. Here are 10 things that have baffled scientists. Imagine that you constantly hear a low-frequency hum, and no one can trace its source. Roughly 4% of the world's population hears the hum. It's a geography-free sound. I mean, people all around the world hear it, so the name varies from Tao's hum to Auckland hum, depending on the region where it gets generated. The sound is just on the threshold of human hearing. People hear it less when they're outside, and it gets louder indoors, especially at night. What's even scarier is that you cannot unhear it once you've heard it. Some folks say it started in London around the time of Charles Dickens, who wrote A Christmas Carol, and the low-frequency sound actually comes from the humbug. Or not. Actually, the earliest cases were recorded in Bristol, UK, dating back to the mid-1970s. Scientists have various theories about where the hum comes from and why only some people can hear it. Yet they don't have a clear answer. It could occur when ocean waves move along the ocean floor. They shake the Earth when they collide with continental shelves. Or this might be happening because of volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. Oh, and how about ultra-low frequency radio signals used to communicate with submarines or even 5G? Upsweep is another type of unidentified sound. It was discovered in 1991 in the Pacific Ocean. The sound is high enough to be recorded throughout the ocean. Scientists theorize that the sound could be related to underwater volcanic activity. Interestingly, the volume of the sound has been diminishing compared to its volume when it was first discovered, yet it still can be detected. Plus, it's seasonal. It reaches its highest volume in spring and fall. Is it related to seasonal changes? No one really knows for sure. The next mysterious thing is a cone-shaped monument found in the Sea of Galilee in Israel. This monument was discovered accidentally by sonar scanning in 2003, but the findings were published only in 2013. The monument weighs 60,000 tons. It was once submerged by rising waters. Archaeologists say the monument is enigmatic because they can't figure out where it's from. They don't know what it's connected to or its function. So this big and unusual thing remains a mystery. Now let's move to Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. This place offers you one of the most archaeologically significant sites in the world. Why is it important? Well, it has massive carved stones about 11,000 years old. To put it in perspective, they're 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. Ancient people placed these stones before they began farming or crafting metal tools or pottery. So the existence of this place goes against the chronology of civilization we're familiar with, where people farmed first and built second. Apparently, it wasn't like that. In any case, a good question is, what was the purpose of this site? Was it built to worship some spirits? Yep, archaeologists believe it might be the world's oldest temple. Okay, say this with me. Paleodictyon notusum. Yeah, I know it sounds like a chemical formula. This is a living fossil found deep down on the ocean floor. A creature makes these hexagonal burrows, that for sure. Yet scientists can't identify the artist. Now, what do I mean by living fossil? Well, Paleodictyon notusum is a creature believed to produce a burrow nearly identical to Paleodictyon fossils. Is it a worm-like animal that made them? Scientists don't know. One thing is clear. This isn't some random stuff created by geological forces. Now, speaking of fossils, take a look at this giant one. Its informal name is Godzilius. It was discovered in 2011 by an amateur paleontologist. This is a scientist who studies the history of life on Earth by analyzing fossil records. Anyway, back to Godzilius. It's almost 7 feet in length and 9 feet tall if you were to measure it upright. This fossil is 450 million years old, coming from the time when Cincinnati was underwater. It might be a fossilized algae mat, but some scientists have different opinions. This is a massive tunnel found in South America. The tunnel is at least 8,000 to 10,000 years old. At first, researchers discovered a couple of colossal burrows. They were enormous and neatly constructed. Geologists were amazed, saying they had never seen such structures before. There's no known geologic process to explain their formation. I mean, researchers have known about the burrows since the 1930s, but back then they believed that these tunnels were just some sort of archaeological construction, until they discovered huge claw marks on the walls and ceiling. They reasoned that some extinct species could be the ones to have left these marks. Many geologists strongly believe they found the burrows of giant ground sloths and armadillos. The structure is the largest known burrow from the Paleolithic age in the Amazon. Yet experts have many questions. How come such a deliberate-looking structure could form naturally? A researcher then discovered another strange cave. This one was hundreds of miles away from the massive tunnel. Fast forward, there are now more than 1,500 burrows from the Paleolithic age found in Brazil. What's even more interesting is that some of these caves are connected to tunnels that sometimes lead to chambers. I'll continue with a natural phenomenon. What if I told you that every year, especially in October, fireballs appear on the Mekong River in Thailand? According to legends, Naga fireballs are a call for Buddha to return to Earth, and river serpents are the ones making these calls. Well, that's a myth, but what does science say about it? Is it related to a flammable gas? There are no clear answers yet. These fireballs appear to rise from the water. They can go as high as almost 990 feet. They're like fireworks, disappearing rapidly. They typically glow with a reddish or orange color. I'll mention some legends too, because why not? They're thrilling. And it would be a shame not to include the one about the lost city of Atlantis. As you may know, the legend says that Atlantis submerged into the ocean around 11,000 years ago. Since then, not just scientists, but also treasure hunters and philosophers have been searching for the lost world. Could Bimini Road be a trace? In 1968, a diver found strange stones off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. The stones look human-made. It's like they were evenly spaced out and laid in an orderly row. It baffled scientists, but not for long. Carbon dating analysis of the blocks revealed that geological forces created the road naturally. There weren't any tool marks or signs indicating that the blocks had been stacked or something. The research is continuing, but yeah, scientists generally believe that the rocks were created by erosion. Well, I guess the time of Atlantis hasn't come yet. Okay, picture this. You're wandering on the beach, and you see dozens of octopuses walking past. In 2017, a group of people from Wales witnessed exactly this. Why did these creatures come out of the ocean? No one knows the answer. The group reported that they had seen 20 to 30 octopi crawling on the sand. The people looked for some signs of injury, but found nothing. They said that they had carried the animals back to the ocean. Interestingly, these creatures kept crawling onto the shore when people were asleep. Experts say that it's hard to be sure of the reason that pushed the animals to the beach without conducting a physical examination. They're still speculating about the reason behind this unusual and rare occurrence. Could it be overcrowding? Furthermore, the octopi were well armed. A separate study points out that the more fishers hunt large animals that feed on octopuses, the more the octopus population grows. Maybe that's why these creatures have to go farther to find food or shelter. But without proper research, these are only theories. There's a lot we don't know about space, too. So here's a bonus fact about the yellowish source of life in the solar system. Scientists have discovered a new type of wave inside the sun. These waves move in the opposite direction to the sun's rotation. Plus, they move super fast. So fast that it's beyond our understanding. Researchers have different theories about the function of the waves. If they figure out their role, this could give them additional insight into the processes happening inside the sun. And yes, the octopi were well armed. If there's a question that still baffles archaeologists to this day, it's this one. How did the ancient Egyptians build those magnificent pyramids? As far as we know today, their resources were quite limited, especially in terms of tools and building materials. We still don't have a fully satisfying answer, but hey, we've got some pretty amazing theories worth considering. The leading contender among these theories involves the clever Egyptians employing a sneaky strategy. Now picture this. They constructed a slanted and curving mound made of bricks, earth, and sand encircling the pyramid to be. As the pyramid grew taller and taller, they simply increased the height and length of this wacky structure. It's like they were playing an ancient game of Jenga. Now, how did they get those massive stone blocks up there? Well, according to the legendary ancient Greek historian Herodotus, they used sleds, rollers, and levers. It sounds like they turned construction into a supersized game of tug-of-war. And guess what? Herodotus also claimed that the Great Pyramid, the one from Giza, the granddaddy of them all, took a whopping 20 years to build. There's more. Herodotus also dropped a mind-boggling number on us. 100,000 men were supposedly involved in this pyramid extravaganza. Did they hire the entire Egyptian population? Well, it might not be as far-fetched as it sounds. These men were probably mostly farmers, so they probably focused on the pyramids when there wasn't much work to be done in the fields. Like during the flood season of the Nile River. Obviously, specialists in the archaeological community had something to add to this theory. By the late 20th century, they discovered some evidence that suggests the workforce might have been smaller and more permanent than previously thought. Instead of a massive army of 100,000 pyramid builders, they proposed that a modest crew of around 20,000 workers, accompanied by support personnel like bakers, physicians, and even spiritual leaders, could have gotten the job done. There was also this theory that claimed that the pyramids were actually built from the top downward. It suggested that these colossal structures were nothing more than isolated hills used as quarries. The stones were supposedly drawn from these hills, and over time, competing engineers took charge and transformed them into the iconic pyramids we know today. Now, before you dismiss this theory as a wild fantasy, some folks thought it wasn't completely crazy. After all, there are instances where isolated hills exist, so maybe this theory had a tiny glimmer of truth. Whether it involved ramp building or ingenious work schedules, one thing is clear. Those pyramids have definitely left their mark on history and on our imaginations. Now, speaking of ancient Egyptian mysteries, there's this gigantic unfinished obelisk sitting in ancient Egypt, and scientists are trying to figure out how it was shaped. Now, some people suggest that our industrious ancestors used handheld pounders to get the job done. One expert has a different take on the matter, though. He argues that if we take a closer look at the pattern left behind by the shaping tool, we'll notice something peculiar. The walls of the trenches surrounding the obelisk display a neat and even pattern, which is pretty unlikely if they were pounded away by mere mortal hands. According to this expert, those horizontal striations are usually the result of a tool that takes breaks while removing material, leaving its mark on the surface. But wait, there's more. Imagine the tool being rocked back and forth against the trench walls, clearing away the waste to keep the trench from narrowing. Well, in that case, the tool might have left some funky horizontal striations where it was pressed against the sidewall. This sounds like some fancy technology at play, don't you think? And guess what? The dynastic Egyptians probably didn't have access to that kind of know-how. Another famous Egyptologist from way back also uncovered a bunch of core drills during his adventures. Although the actual drill bits are missing, his collection houses these particular core remnants made of limestone, alabaster, and even granite. These constructions aren't the only amazing thing the ancient Egyptians left behind, though. As it turns out, the Egyptians were the genius minds behind the creation of the handheld mirror. Yeah, that little mirror you use every day to check yourself out. But here's the twist. These mirrors are like pieces of art. They were decorated with inscriptions and figures. But that's not all. The Egyptians had a serious concern with their appearance. They knew the importance of personal hygiene and looking fabulous. So, in their quest for pearly whites, they invented toothbrushes and toothpaste. Dental problems were pretty common back then, and their smiles weren't exactly all white. Dentistry wasn't their strongest suit, you see. Maybe their minds were distracted by all that pyramid building. So that doesn't mean those ancient toothpaste recipes weren't amazing. One delightful concoction included rock salt, mint, dried iris petals, and pepper. Some brave dentists in the 21st century tried it out, and it worked pretty well. Ground-up ash was also used in another recipe to create a tooth cleansing paste. Mint was missing, so that didn't do much for their breath. That's when the genius Egyptians came up with the world's first breath mints. They made tablets from heated spices like cinnamon, and they mixed it with honey. Now, let's shift gears to home decor, Egyptian style. They surely took ornamentation to the next level. While the concept of decorating furniture started in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians cranked it up a notch. They went all out with different colors of ink and even developed various weights of paper. Oh, and let's not forget about those cute little area rugs we all have in our homes today. Guess who came up with the idea? Yep, the Egyptians. They used the versatile papyrus plant to make those cozy rugs. And speaking of trends, the Egyptians loved their knickknacks. They had an assortment of small figurines in the shapes of cats, dogs, and people. These statues were made from various materials, like simple sun-dried mud to the ultimate bling of gold. It all depended on how loaded you were. The Egyptians were also all about farming, and they knew that clean water was crucial for their crops and animals. That's why they came up with some nifty inventions and techniques to make sure their land was fertile and their plants were happy. First off, they had the genius idea of using ox-drawn plows. They had two types of plows, heavy and light. The heavy plow would strut its stuff, cutting deep furrows in the soil, while the lighter plow followed behind, fluffing up the earth. But they didn't stop there. After plowing, the Egyptians would break up clumps of soil and sow the rows with seeds. To give those seeds a good old squish into the furrows, they'd march their livestock across the field, effectively closing up the furrows. But hey, all that hard work would be pointless if their seeds were as dry as the Sahara. That's where irrigation comes into play. The Egyptians were so good at it that other cultures, like the Greeks and Romans, couldn't help but copy their techniques. Now let's switch gears and talk about the marvelous architecture of ancient Egypt. These folks weren't just skilled farmers, they were also architectural maestros. They built these fancy canals to carry water to farms and villages, and boy, did they know how to make those canals look pretty. Just imagine strolling along a canal lined with ornate structures. The pharaoh Ramesses the Great was quite the overachiever when it came to construction. One of his mind-blowing creations was the construction located at Abu Simbel. This building was designed so that twice a year, the sun would shine directly into it and illuminate the statues of Ramesses. And let's not forget about the corbelled arch. Without this architectural gem, we'd be missing out on some mind-boggling structures like the Great Pyramid. The Egyptians knew how to make things stand tall and proud, thanks to their engineering and construction wizardry. They built grand halls and inner sanctums that make your jaw drop. And some of these temples doubled as astronomical observatories.
Seen a good horror movie lately? If you're a fan of those, then you can appreciate a good plot. But what if I told you that Mother Nature is the best scriptwriter ever? Ancient disasters were scarier than any horror movie today. From tsunamis to volcanic eruptions, you'll be shocked by the scale of these events. One natural disaster you definitely don't want to experience is a tsunami. Those gigantic walls of water sweep across the coast and take out everything in their way. And it's nothing new for our planet. Scientists were able to piece together a timeline based on evidence that major tsunamis left. In northern Chile, a large boulder sits high above the Pacific Ocean. Behind it, a desert as far as the eye can see. This 44-ton stone obviously doesn't belong here. It's the result of an ancient tsunami. Waves as high as a 6-story building carried boulders like pebbles. Researchers estimate this happened in 1420. But how can they possibly know this? In the 15th century, there were no written records in the region. Time for some detective work. Archaeologists discovered that around the same time, there was a tsunami in Japan, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. The ground shook off the coast of Chile. That's how the tsunami was created. Then the wave traveled nearly 2/5 of the Earth's circumference. That's one tireless tsunami. But this wasn't a one-time event. Evidence suggests that a similar event happened 3,800 years ago. Ancient people abandoned their coastal villages around this time. They were moving inland. How did they know it was time to go? There's evidence of erosion due to strong currents, telltale signs of an ancient tsunami. As you know from school textbooks, oxygen is 21% of the air we breathe, but it wasn't always a part of Earth's atmosphere. Oxygen was missing during the first half of our planet's lifespan. Carbon dioxide and methane were the name of the game back then. CO2 is what makes our drinks fizz, but isn't the other gas dangerous? Yes, because you can't smell methane, and that's the reason there was no life on Earth billions of years ago. So how did we get from methane to oxygen? In come the cyanobacteria. This group of microbes started to evolve some 2.7 billion years ago. These tiny microbes mastered photosynthesis, converting sunlight into energy. And the byproduct of this process was, you've guessed it, oxygen. Soon it started escaping from water into the atmosphere. There, it reacted with methane, and over time, O2 replaced it completely. Scientists named this process the Great Oxidation Event. But how could it be bad? After all, we're alive thanks to it. All that oxygen acted as a poison for anaerobic organisms. And no, these are not life forms that didn't do aerobics or Pilates. The term simply means that these microorganisms didn't need oxygen to grow. Too much oxygen, and they would be goners. And that's precisely what happened. Scientists spoke of an oxygen overshoot that changed Earth's atmosphere for good. The disappearance of most anaerobic organisms was an early example of an extinction event. They didn't like the atmosphere at the time and decided to step down. But look on the bright side. They made room for oxygen-loving humans to enter the picture. Let's go to Turkey. No, not the seaside resorts that tourists visit in the summer, but the region of Anatolia in the southeast of the country. Göbekli Tepe is the world's oldest known temple site. It dates back to the Neolithic period. Scientists found a stone pillar here that tells a tale of an ancient disaster. They presume that the pillar is commemorative. Today, humans still build similar structures to mark an important event or a person. Just one example is the Washington Memorial. It was built in honor of the first American president, George Washington. But the pillar in Turkey doesn't commemorate a happy event. Scientists believe it shows a devastating occurrence, a comet crashing into the Earth. The event must have been destructive. There are also other signs on the monument. These symbols align with the setup of the night sky stars for the year 10,950 BCE. The date astounded the researchers. It matched their earlier research of an ice core sample in Greenland. This showed that a comet fragment hit our planet around the same time. The archaeological site could have easily been an ancient observatory. And whoever worked at it observed a cataclysmic event. The impact must have been so powerful that it changed the Earth's rotational axis. That's the imaginary pole going through our planet from top to bottom. That ancient comet must have packed a punch to knock the blue planet off balance. Have you heard of the city of Tal El Hammam in the valley of the Jordan River? The reason why your answer is probably no is that the city doesn't exist today. It completely disappeared around the year 1650 BCE. It was one of the three major cities in this part of the Middle East. Together, these three cities had a population bigger than Palm Springs today. At the time, Tal El Hammam was a metropolis. It even had high-rises, 5-story buildings constructed using mud bricks. But archaeologists found strange markings on them. The bricks melted as they were exposed to high temperatures. Yes, sound the fire alarm. Some sort of disaster had caused a major fire. Archaeological finds pointed to a suspect for such damage, a rock from space. So, where was the crater? This comet, or an asteroid, never made it to the ground. It was traveling at high speed, so it disintegrated before hitting the ground. Such an event is called an airburst. The largest witnessed meteor airburst happened over Tunguska in the north of Asia in 1908. Scientists estimated that the airburst in Tal el Hammam happened 2.5 miles above the city. This event released a lot of energy. Air temperature quickly rose to 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to set clothes and wood on fire in an instant. Mud bricks and tools made from metal start to melt when exposed to such heat. This would explain the evidence scientists unearthed. But there was one more find: salt. The event was so powerful that it distributed salt over the region around the Dead Sea. Any farmer will tell you that salty soil and crops don't go well together. People started moving away from the area because they couldn't grow food. Imagine an island with whitewashed villages surrounded by a sapphire blue sea. Such a place exists in reality. It's the island of Santorini. But the history of this place hides a tale of destruction. The island is of volcanic origin. This means that a violent eruption created it some 3,000 years ago. Now there are two islands. The bigger one is shaped like a horseshoe. When you look at them from above, the two islands look like they form a circle. That's because they were once a single island. It had a large mountain and was round in shape. But then it all changed almost overnight. One of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history tore Santorini apart. The earth trembled, tsunamis formed, and clouds of ash filled the sky. A daunting image. People felt the eruption hundreds of miles away. When it was all over, seawater rushed into the caldera of the former volcano. That's why the water in the lagoon has such a beautiful color. Scientists know so much about Santorini's past because of an unlikely assistant, a tree. The juniper tree, to be exact. People use its aromatic wood for everything from furniture to making pencils. On the Greek island, its rings revealed the tale of the ancient eruption. As a tree grows, it doesn't only go up, it expands sideways as well. Each new layer of bark adds a ring to the trunk. It takes a year for one ring to form. And on Santorini, one ring was unnaturally pale. The scientists did the math and voila, they dated the eruption to 1560 BCE.
It's nighttime, and you're about to walk inside Pharaoh Tutankhamun's final resting place. You know, King Tut. You don't have a torch, but at least you came with a flashlight. You walk down several flights of stairs and observe how the walls are carved in hieroglyphics and what looks like a spell. Those who take anything from this place will be doomed for life, the spell says. Even if you don't really believe it, this scares you a little bit. You find a huge stone door. Is it a trap? You manage to open it, but oh no, it's only an empty chamber. You check your map. It seems like you're heading in the right direction. After what feels like hours, you realize you must be trapped inside a labyrinth. You try to retrace your steps, but you can't find the door where you came in from anymore. That's it, you think to yourself. You've fallen for the Pharaoh's trap. What's worse, you didn't bring a lunch. Okay, so we've all seen Hollywood movies where the main character is exploring ancient ruins and faces some seriously dangerous traps, right? We've been told Egyptian royalty protected their final resting places with venomous scorpions and snakes, sliding doors that will trap you for life, and giant rolling boulders that will crush anyone on their paths. The thing is, were these traps truly real? Well, I regret to be the one to break it to you, but this is all fiction. These elaborate traps were too technologically advanced for ancient civilizations to pull off. That is not to say, however, that there weren't any traps at all. Ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians and the Mayans, are known for their practice of building entire monuments dedicated to the ones who had passed away. These structures would often reflect the position of person occupied in society. So, for the really important people, the VIPs of their times, massive monuments were built to host their bodies long after they were gone. Some of these civilizations believed that a person's life would continue on the other side of the veil. For that reason, a person would be buried together with the belongings of their current life. If they had a lot of money and power and stuff, that meant their resting places would be filled with riches and gold. Now imagine if you lived in ancient Egypt and you knew exactly where all the pharaohs' tombs were located and had heard rumors of the amount of wealth kept in these places. Maybe you would be tempted to go check it out, right? We're talking about large rooms filled from floor to ceiling with golden artifacts, jewels, and even money. I mean, it does sound tempting. And since there weren't any security guards protecting the entrance of these places, Egyptians needed to get creative as to how they would protect these riches. These old civilizations found some traps to be useful. A recurring one was building empty rooms inside the monument to confuse a burglar. Now, let's take a look at Amenhotep III's final resting place as an example. It was built in the city of Luxor, in a spot also known as the Western Valley of the Kings. Two French engineers originally discovered the monument between 1905 and 1914 CE. The structure is huge and has more than 10 chambers, connected by long corridors and steep stairways. The King's Chamber is the most hidden one, and for an outsider to try and find it, they will probably enter a lot of empty rooms beforehand. Other pharaohs tried to protect their riches by commissioning monuments with false doors concealing pits that were up to 20 feet deep. This way, an unwarned and unwanted visitor would be surprised by the deep hole on their way to the king's resting chamber. Alongside false doors, pharaohs made sure to build labyrinth-style corridors and false walls. This way, robbers could take hours or days before they found the king's real chamber. As to pits with poisonous snakes on them, if there were any reptiles inside these monuments, they probably got inside on their own and would most likely not stay there for long. There is no way snakes would survive years and years without food inside these pits. So yes, another Hollywood-induced belief right there. If these traps seem boring to you, archaeologists did find an interesting deterrent in the final resting place of the Red Queen of Palenque in Mexico. Palenque was one of the most powerful Mayan cities in pre-Columbian Mexico, and the Red Queen was believed to be the grandmother of the last Mayan king, undoubtedly a person of immense importance to the empire. In her honor, a huge monument was built to keep her body after her passing. The discovery of the tomb itself was already thrilling. Archaeologists found an ancient monument when digging at the site back in 1994. The first thing they found was a room with a hidden door. Once they opened the door, they discovered a long corridor. Finally, at the end of this corridor was the Queen's chamber. The team of archaeologists was beyond excited to unearth this chamber with the mummy of the Queen herself still inside it. They found her to be accompanied by her pearls, jade shells, and expensive rocks. But as the team explored the remains, they saw something rather strange. The room was filled with a red-colored powder. Researchers knew that the color red was important to the Mayan people, and that much of their clothing and buildings were decorated with this color. But they didn't understand why the queen was buried with this unknown red substance. After they took a sample back with them for further analysis, they discovered that the red powder was cinnabar, a very dangerous mineral. This powder, when inhaled, can cause, shall we say, severe health damage to a person. The team concluded that this could only be a trap for anyone trying to steal her riches. Okay, so dangerous powders might have worked as the most intense traps we've seen until now. But perhaps the cheapest way to keep out unwanted visitors was to advertise spells written out all over the monument. We'd probably laugh at these today, but back in the day, they were more or less effective. Spells usually said that the person who took anything from that place would meet a tragic fate. Some spells said that robbers would lose their houses in big fires or terrible floods. Other spells said burglars would have incurable and undiagnosed health issues, but they weren't really enough to stop people from taking any gold. There are some stories surrounding how these spells might have been real. One of them is from the famous British Egyptologist Howard Carter, the one responsible for unearthing Pharaoh Tutankhamun's resting place in the 1920s. After months of unsuccessful digging, Carter discovered the tomb's existence by chance. He found the entrance to a stairway right beneath the soil where he had been searching all those months. With the help of a team, he cleared the piles of sand blocking the stairs and discovered a doorway. The door had several royal symbols carved into it, and Carter knew this could only mean a very important person had been buried there. And he was right. With a chisel, he made a hole in the top left-hand corner of the doorway and lit his vision with the help of a candle. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, the reflection of several golden and jeweled items crowding the chamber before him. Lost for 3,000 years, Carter had just discovered the final resting place of King Tut. But the story didn't finish here. This discovery was accompanied by a series of unfortunate events that led people to believe it had something to do with the pharaoh's spell. Carter himself mysteriously passed away just a few years later, and some of his assistants lost their houses in floods, just like one of the spells threatened. Some say it's just coincidental, as there's no real proof of these things being connected. Well, what do you think? Was this an effective trap after all? Scientists have recently discovered Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages under a medieval castle in Italy. They followed a newly found 15th century sketch by the creator of the Mona Lisa and found one of the unexplored architectural wonders from the age of the Renaissance. Construction of the Sforza Castle started back in 1358, but it was destroyed about a century later during a local crisis. Then, in 1450, Francesco Sforza, the Duke of Milan, decided to rebuild it on the old ruins. After he passed away, his son Ludovico took over and kept improving the castle. He brought in some of the best artists of the time, including Leonardo da Vinci, to decorate its walls. We can still see Leonardo's frescoes today in the Room of Wooden Boards. While he was working at the castle, da Vinci also recorded some historical underground passages hidden beneath the outer wall. The drawing, dated between 1487 and 1490, was found at the Institut de France in Paris. The sketch is highly precise, and it proves that Leonardo was really interested in fortification design and was great at documenting existing structures. Historical records show that Ludovico ordered the building of an underground passageway that led straight to a basilica, where his wife was buried. Ludovico married Beatrice in 1491, and they had a happy but tragically short marriage, as Beatrice passed away while giving birth in 1497. The Duke locked himself away for weeks, grew a beard, and wore only black clothes while he was mourning his beloved wife. The secret tunnel may have stretched over a half a mile and would let Ludovico visit her grave in private. It could have served as an escape route if the castle was ever under siege. The existence of the tunnels remained one of the mysteries of the Renaissance for years, as no one knew for sure they were there. But now, scientists finally uncovered the secret history. They used a combination of ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning to build up an accurate 3D model of all the structures under the castle. They found the tunnels da Vinci alluded to in his drawings, and it looks like they may have only been a small part of a whole system of historical underground passages. The goal is to create a complete digital twin of the castle that will not only show all the preserved constructions, but also the ancient ones that are no longer visible. They also plan to add augmented reality to the virtual paths to let visitors discover Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages. Now, we don't know if the genius actually took part in constructing the hidden passages that scientists recently discovered, but we do know about some other Leonardo da Vinci inventions. He created the first satellite-like map in 1502, long before photography or satellites were even a concept. A famous figure in Italy, Cesare Borgia, invited Leonardo to a small town called Imola, near Bologna, to create a highly detailed map for him. Back then, maps were not very precise, as no one had figured out how to show exact distances on a smaller scale. Instead, people spent a lot of time decorating them with dragons, roses, fancy castles, mountain ranges, flowers, and other artistic details. These maps look more like beautiful paintings meant to be displayed, rather than practical tools for navigation. But Cesare Borgia wanted something truly functional, and Leonardo managed to create something revolutionary in the field of cartography. If you compare satellite images of Imola today with Leonardo's map, the similarities are striking. He captured every alley, curve of the streets, roadways, and even the exact sizes of the buildings. And he did it all by hand, using just a pencil, ruler, compass, and several of his own clever inventions. To gather all the necessary data, the genius walked through the streets for weeks using a large wheel that spun as he moved, recording the distance with a cable. Using the magnetic compass, he determined precise directions. He also developed a tool called the bussola, which measured angles inside a circle. With this, he could track the exact turns of each street and the size of the intersections. He figured out the distances between houses and major roads. Then, back at home, he used his notes and calculations to draw the map to scale with incredible precision. In his work, Da Vinci also used a technique developed by Florentine humanist Leon Battista Alberti. He created a mapping method where you could place an entire city inside a circle using polar coordinates. At the center of the city, 8 straight lines met, representing the main directions of a compass. Leonardo used this system to divide the town into 8 sections. He didn't overlook even the smallest buildings, which made his map one of the most advanced of its time. The Italian genius had a big dream to build a machine that could let people fly. He studied how birds, bats, and kites move through the air and designed a special flying machine. He believed that if he could copy their movements, humans might be able to soar like them. Da Vinci's design looked a lot like a bat, with 2 large pointed wings that stretched over 33 feet wide. He planned to build the frame from lightweight pine wood and cover it with raw silk to make it strong but not too heavy. The person flying it would lie on their stomach on a wooden board in the center. To make the wings flap, the pilot had to pedal a crank with their feet, which was connected to a system of rods and pulleys. There was also a hand crank for extra power and even a headpiece to help steer. As the person moved their hands and feet, the wings would flap and twist, just like a bird's. But there was one big problem. Humans aren't strong enough to make the machine lift off the ground. Even though it might have worked once in the air, there was no way for a person to get it flying on their own. Leonardo probably realized this, but his amazing idea still inspired flying machines that came centuries later. Da Vinci was way ahead of his time with many of his inventions, but his idea for a humanoid robot was especially futuristic. He was working under the patronage of the Sforza family, the one that had those ancient tunnels of Italy built. The genius designed a mechanical knight that could move its arms, turn its neck, and even open and close its mouth. Da Vinci had good knowledge of anatomy and the mechanics of body movements that helped him. His unusual creation used an external system of cables. A hand crank set it in motion, and there was also an internal gear-driven mechanism. About 450 years later, Da Vinci's detailed sketches of the robotic knight were rediscovered in the 1950s. Several researchers tried to recreate the robot from those sketches. In 2002, a roboticist who developed systems for NASA and Lockheed Martin took inspiration from the old notes and built a functioning model of Da Vinci's robotic knight. Another design Leonardo created for Duke Sforza was a special kind of bridge that could be taken apart and carried easily. It was made for defense forces who needed to cross rivers or moats while traveling. This bridge would swing across the water and land on the other side. It had wheels and used a rope and pulley system, so it could be set up quickly and packed away just as fast. To keep it steady, it even had a special weight to help balance it. Leonardo wrote in his notes that the bridge was light yet strong, and he designed several bridges like this for the Duke. One of his other designs was a bridge that could be built very quickly, and the defense forces would move across multiple rivers. As scientists continued to study Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages, they reveal new chapters in human history. Who knows what other unexplored architectural structures they will find. Welcome to Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. It's a tiny speck in the vast Pacific Ocean, 2,200 miles away from the coast of Chile. This island is most famous for its eerie moai statues. This place is also home to one of the most mysterious writing systems in the world, called Ronga Ronga. We found it on 27 small wooden tablets. For years, historians have been arguing about the true history of these tablets, and now we might have found the truth. Humans first set foot on this island in the 12th century. For many years, it was home to the Rapa Nui people. They were pretty isolated out there in the Pacific Ocean until Europeans arrived in the 1720s. Europeans brought with them lots of troubles, leaving only a small fraction of the native population alive. Later in the 19th century, a missionary, Eugene Iro, went to the island and discovered the wooden tablets with intricate symbols carved on them. He wrote how marvelous they are, but there are hundreds of them on the island, and that they can be found in every household. But unfortunately, not all of them survive to this day. We've only got 27 of them. Some of them were heavily weathered, burned, or otherwise damaged, and now they're scattered all over the world in museums and private collections. Some of the language's artifacts were carted off to Tahiti and then to Europe by Europeans, leaving none behind on Easter Island itself. The 4 sacred tablets found their home in a congregation in Rome. They were the ones used in the recent discovery. For years, historians have been arguing whether this writing system was made up by the islanders themselves or they borrowed it from Europeans. To find the truth, they decided to use a technique called radiocarbon dating. All organic materials, like wood, charcoal, and so on, contain a tiny amount of a radioactive form of carbon called carbon-14. When life comes to an end, things stop taking in carbon-14, and the amount they had starts to decay over time. By measuring how much carbon-14 is left in a sample, we can assume how old this sample is. This is how we learn the age of many fossils and artifacts. So, they looked at the age of some Ronga Ronga tablets. 3 of them were crafted from trees grown in the 18th or 19th century, which aligns with the arrival of Europeans. However, one of them is older than the Europeans' first visit to the island. There are 2 reasons to believe that Rapa Nui people created this writing system themselves. First, Ronga Ronga works differently from European languages. Decoding it is a pretty hard task. Unlike English, this language boasts over 400 unique glyphs, none of which resemble any known writing system. There were many attempts to decipher this language, and none of them were successful so far. And second, one of the tablets is shown to be from around the 15th century, before the Europeans arrived. The problem is that radiocarbon dating can only tell us when the wood the tablet was made from was cut down, not when the writing was put on it. And since we've only got one tablet to go by, this isn't enough to be completely sure. On the other hand, why and where would they preserve cut wood for over 200 years just to grab it and write something on it one day? But anthropologists and historians say that it's possible. Scarce wood resources might have led the islanders to reuse old driftwood, which could be centuries older than the writing itself. This is known as the old wood problem in archaeology. Plus, the tablet looks very preserved. It was maintained to protect it from wood-damaging insects, humidity, and so on. That's why it survived over the centuries. Whatever is written on it, it was probably important for the Rapa Nui people. Now, all of these are guesses and clues, but scientists are cautiously optimistic. They believe that Ronga Ronga could be one of the rare instances of independent writing invention, like those of the Sumerians or the Egyptians. But we need more evidence. In the Rapa Nui language, rogo rogo means to recite or to declaim. Not everyone could write, only a select few. Probably only the elite of Easter Island, mostly men, knew and could read this written language. After colonization, none of them survived. So now we have to rack our brains trying to figure out what's written here. First, scholars can't agree on what type of script it is. We aren't even sure that this was their language. But even if it was, we don't know whether it's a primitive form of writing or a fully developed system. In the 1990s, a linguist, Stephen Roger Fisher believed he might have cracked the code of Ronga structure. His idea was that these tablets conveyed cosmogonies. Cosmogonies are stories or narratives that explain how the universe was created and how natural phenomena came to be. They often come from ancient traditions and cultures, like those found in East Polynesia. The tablets could have talked about things like how the world began, where everything came from, and how different aspects of nature, like the stars or the mountains, were formed. This would also explain why only the wise elite could write. Fisher thought that Ronga is a mix of logographic and semasiographic systems, which means that some symbols represent spoken words, while others represent ideas or concepts. But deciphering them would be very hard because it requires extensive memory and knowing context, because the symbols are more like hints than complete expressions. However, other language experts disagreed with his ideas, saying there were problems with how he put together his theory. Unfortunately, Fisher couldn't prove this hypothesis. Maybe these are just drawings. If we look at the tablets, there are some things that look recognizable: people, animals, plants, and geometric shapes. There are some birds. One of them looks like a frigate bird, which Rapa Nui people associate with the deity Maki Maki. There are also fish, centipedes, and so on, or at least these glyphs look like them. Could it be just art or a form of decoration? Maybe, but there are some problems. The glyphs show a high degree of complexity and structure. They also keep the same style. For example, there are several symbols that show something human-like with a raised hand. The only difference is different heads. As if it wasn't complicated enough, this unique writing style also uses a system known as reverse boustrophodon. This means that each alternate line is flipped upside down, resembling nothing seen elsewhere. We don't know why they would turn the tablet upside down after each line. But all this shows that they had some sort of system and organization behind these symbols. Plus, it seems like they use these tablets every day for some practical purpose. But there's some hope for the future. New technology, like AI and other computer programs, might help us understand lost languages. We already started creating algorithms that could help us solve other mysteries, like the Voynich manuscript. Academics even organized the Vesuvius Challenge, a machine learning competition that, in 2023, cracked the riddle of the ancient Herculaneum scrolls. The scrolls were buried under volcanic mud after the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. In real life, the scrolls are very fragile, so deciphering them would be a very hard task. But with digital scanning and machine learning, it's much easier. They have a rich history. They most likely belong to the personal library of an Epicurean philosopher named Philodemus. These scrolls contain very important insights into Greek philosophy and Latin literature. If we decipher more of them, we'll learn more about the rich history of the Roman Empire. Archaeologists have been studying Petra in Jordan for 200 years, and in 2024, they found something they had never seen before. It's a tomb with at least 12 complete human skeletons and artifacts that are over 2,000 years old right in front of the treasury. Bronze, iron, and ceramic items were placed with the deceased, which shows how people honored their loved ones when they passed away. It's a rare chance for scientists to learn more about the Nabateans, an ancient group of Arabian nomads who built Petra. The objects found in the tomb under Petra's treasury are in amazing condition, but the skeletons became fragile because it's damp inside the tomb. They plan to study the remains and extract DNA to see if the people in the tomb were related. While some scientists are solving tomb mysteries, others have trained AI to find new ancient sites for them. They've created an algorithm that works with a special type of satellite imagery. This technique uses radio waves that can peek under things like sand, soil, and even ice to find hidden objects. AI will help search a huge desert on the Arabian Peninsula called the Empty Quarter for archaeological treasures. The lead scientists of the experiment trained the algorithm to recognize hidden locations using data from a site they had found before. The new tech can discover buried structures within 20 inches, which is very precise. Another groundbreaking tech, LiDAR, which means light detection and ranging, helped archaeologists reveal new hidden cities all around the world. LiDAR can see big structures beneath layers of vegetation and map even subtle changes in ancient landscapes. They use it to scan large areas from a small plane flying over places that aren't so easy to study from the ground, like dense jungle. In 2024 alone, they found new Maya settlements in southern Mexico, gardens, roads, and rivers in Ecuador's Amazon rainforest, ancient ruins on the Pacific island of Tonga, and the remains of 2 medieval cities along the Silk Road route in Uzbekistan. Maybe some smart technology can also explain what Marge Simpson is doing on Earth in an ancient Egyptian tomb from 3,000 years ago. The drawing, featuring a woman with yellow-colored skin, a blue crown, and a green outfit, is alarmingly like the famous cartoon character. If you don't see a resemblance here, I hope you'll at least enjoy an amazingly well-preserved necklace with amethyst and agate beads. It's from another recent find from Egypt, an ancient tomb with 11 sealed burials near Luxor. Archaeologists also found 2 copper mirrors, one with a lotus-shaped handle and the second with a unique design of the deity of the sky, women, fertility, and love in ancient Egypt. The hair of the figurine was originally made from almost 4,000 mud beads. Another awesome find from 2024 is an ancient Greek shrine with intact burials, a sarcophagus, and plenty of gold inside. They think it was built before the year 300 before the Common Era, and the marble lions, also found inside, were made from the same marble as the Parthenon in Athens. Greece is so full of ancient treasures that the city of Thessaloniki will house around 300,000 of those artifacts in their new subway system. Meanwhile, archaeologists in France have found a monument unlike any other, and they can't figure out what it was used for. It's direct proof that people used to live here between the Neolithic and the early Iron Age periods. The coolest part is a monument made of 3 unique shapes that fit together like puzzle pieces. Some gravel found in the monument could mean there used to be a wooden fence called a palisade. People who built it probably used it for protection or decoration. The team studied the layers of soil around the monument to learn more about its origins. The only tools found so far were sharp flint stones, not the cartoon characters, which were used during the Neolithic period. The next step will be radiocarbon dating to figure out exactly how old the site is. Now, the oldest saddle ever found so far was found in the grave of a woman near the edge of the Taklamakan Desert in northwest China. This saddle is the oldest ever discovered. It was crafted from pieces of leather that were sewn together and stuffed with straw and animal hair to make it soft. Now, normally, things made from natural materials like this don't last very long because they rot or fall apart. But the Taklamakan Desert is so dry that it helped preserve the artifact. The herdswoman who used the saddle was buried in her full riding attire, so this proves that not only men used saddles and took part in herding and traveling. Now let's shift to Guatemala, where an ornate jade mask made by the ancient Maya people was waiting for centuries to be discovered. Scientists use radiocarbon dating to figure out the age of the mask. They believe the mask may represent a Maya storm deity, a powerful figure in their mythology. These kinds of masks were often made to honor Maya royalty, and they were placed in the tombs of kings and queens when they were buried. The king's tomb was also decorated with carvings made using tools crafted from volcanic obsidian. After 15 years of searching, scientists may have finally figured out where the altar stone of Stonehenge comes from. They compared the tiny minerals inside the altar stone with rocks from many places in Wales and England and ruled out lots of spots. Then they found the perfect match with a place in Scotland, more than 466 miles away from Stonehenge. This area might even be Orkney, a group of islands in the far northeast of Scotland where a lot was going on during the Neolithic period. The big question now is how ancient people moved such a massive stone so far. The altar stone is over 16 feet long and weighs more than 6 tons. The new theory is that they might have used boats to carry it across the coastline and rivers. Once it was close to Stonehenge, they theoretically dragged it across the land using wooden sleds, ropes, and a lot of teamwork. Meanwhile, in the north of France, an ancient home popped to the surface during the construction of a new house. It turned out to be a luxury urban house for the elite from the 2nd century of the Common Era. The inside of the house was destroyed by a fire, but under the destroyed layer, there are beautiful, real-size fresco paintings. Turkish archaeologists unearthed the arm and foot bones of elephants that lived around 9 million years ago. They also found fossils of early horses, giraffes, and even saber-toothed cats. They've already identified 43 distinct types of animals from this site and collected more than 4,000 fossils. One more cool find from Turkey is a 64,000-year-old workshop inside Enkaja Cave. It looks like people used it for 24,000 years non-stop. There are some tools inside, like flakes and blades, which were made inside the workshop. In eastern Turkey, a farmer accidentally found a 1,000-square-foot mosaic from the late Roman or early Byzantine period just beneath the dirt. Experts say it's a one-of-a-kind thing from this region and is still in one piece after all this time. The pattern shows dozens of trees, plants, and animals that were found in ancient Turkey. There could be more treasures in the area, so they plan to keep digging. Our final stop will be in Sicily, where archaeologists uncovered a huge ancient thermal complex. Inside, they found 2 rooms with floors covered in colorful mosaic designs, along with a large courtyard surrounded by arched wings. As they kept digging, they discovered more parts of the ancient city. They found new roads and the remains of a huge complex, along with stretches of old stone walls that were part of the city's fortifications. These discoveries are helping scientists imagine what the city might have looked like during ancient times. No one knows for sure whether the bathhouse was built by the Greeks or the Romans, since both civilizations lived in Sicily long ago.
You know how it goes. As the years pass, common knowledge slips away faster than you can say, "What's that thingamajig for?" Just think, our grandkids will probably be scratching their heads over the buttons on our old school phones. So it's no wonder that some ancient artifacts have got us all stumped too. Take a look at this funky object. Any guesses on what it is? A musical instrument, a toy, or maybe something out of this world? Beats me, and even the experts have no exact answer. This little guy is a Roman dodecahedron, discovered by some amateur archaeologists near Lincoln, England. It's shaped like a fist and made of a mix of metals. Now, as for what this thingy was used for, that's the million-dollar question. Supposedly, these guys were all the rage back in the day in northern Gaul and Roman Germany. According to some ancient maps, similar dodecahedrons have turned up in Europe, Britain, and even along the maritime Silk Road in Southeast Asia. The plot thickens as more and more of these dodecahedrons pop up. Some had wax inside, leading scientists to think they were candle holders. Others think they might have been used for knitting gloves, since none have been found in warmer regions. There's even one found in Geneva with zodiac signs etched on it, sparking some woo-woo theories about fortune-telling. And now a fresh discovery has got everyone's head spinning. Could this be some kind of sacred tool for the Romans? Who knows? Maybe it's the first multi-tool ever, invented way before Swiss Army knives were a thing. Carved stone balls from Scotland are another historical mystery. They most likely date back to the late Neolithic period and come in various types, from sandstone to granite. They're all roughly the same size and have intricate, evenly spaced patterns of circular bosses or knobs. Most of these designs have 6 bosses, but the number can range from 3 to 160. Some of these balls are more skillfully crafted than others, and a few even have extra decorations. There are over 400 carved stone balls and mostly found in Scotland, although some have turned up in northern England and Ireland. These stone balls rarely show signs of damage or use, and there are no clues that would give away their function. Most experts think they weren't practical tools, but had some symbolic or social importance, probably a sign of power or prestige within their communities. The Folkton drums are the 3 stone cylinders from Neolithic Britain, discovered in the late 19th century in a burial mound in East Yorkshire. Nothing similar has been found anywhere else in the British Isles from any prehistoric period. Each drum is decorated with unique designs covering the sides and domed tops. The decorations are mostly geometric, arranged in panels with stylized human faces peeking out from two of the drums. Recent studies of the artifacts using new technologies show that the designs had been carved and recarved over time. A team of experts also analyzed the composition of the drums, and it turns out that they were made from local chalk. In the late Bronze Age in Europe, long before coins became common, finely crafted metal objects served as portable wealth and symbols of high status. Across Europe, archaeologists have found all sorts of artifacts, from gold adornments worn by elites to large bronze cauldrons used in feasts. Beautifully decorated gold rings discovered in Wales are among these items. They're known as lock rings and may have been used to hold hair. Now they're flattened after spending nearly 3,000 years underground. They used to have cone-shaped openings at each end. They were found at different times, but were likely worn as a pair and buried together in a single hoard. Other Roman artifacts made of the copper alloy were first catalogued as lunate pendants. But during a recent re-examination, experts found that these items were actually small mortar and pestle sets, known as cosmetic grinders. They were used to grind minerals for makeup and were specifically designed for applying liner and shadows to the eyes. They were mistaken for pendants because of suspension loops that allowed them to be carried on a cord. These cosmetic sets from the 1st century of the current era were unique to Britain. They prove the influence of imported cosmetics and beauty trends from the Mediterranean and Roman provinces, including Egypt. The Salzburg Cube, also known as the Wolf's Egg Iron, was discovered in the late 19th century in Austria. It doesn't really look like a cube, but is more like a rounded object with two flat sides. Down the middle, it has a groove, and the surface is covered with pits and craters. Workers accidentally found this artifact when they blew apart a piece of coal. The coal seam it came from is thought to be over 60 million years old. The Salzburg Cube moved between museums, mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century, and then showed up again. Some researchers thought it must be a Victorian-era candlestick holder, but still, no one knows the true story of the cube or its current location. Archaeologists have unearthed an incredible historical find in Pakistan, an ancient sphinx estimated to be around 12,500 years old. The region where it was found was once a busy center of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. It had advanced urban planning, intricate art, and sophisticated drainage systems. The discovery of the ancient Sphinx is a good example of their progressive art. We all know of the Great Sphinx of Giza, but what was the significance of the Sphinx in the Indus Valley culture? Their Sphinx has designs and carvings that show scenes with their daily activities, which means it may have had a more complex role than a symbol of power or guardian. It could stand for a balance between humans and nature, or even a deity associated with agriculture. Arauca in Chile sits on the sandy dunes of the Atacama Desert, known as the driest desert in the world. Long before this coastal town was built in the 16th century, the Chinchorro people called this region their home. Archaeologists found hundreds of their mummies. Radiocarbon dating showed that these mummies are over 7,000 years old, which makes them 2,000 years older than the famous Egyptian mummies. The Chinchorro used special techniques to preserve the mummies, not just relying on the dry climate for that. And unlike the Egyptians, they didn't just do it for the elite members of their society, but for everyone, no matter what age or status they had. The local people living in Arauca now are so used to finding mummies in their backyards that they don't feel weird about living among them. In the winter of 1850, a powerful storm with extra high tides hit the west coast of Orkney, Scotland. The wind and waves ripped away the surf, covering a mound, and revealed stone-built structures beneath. A local antiquarian decided to dig up the village that he thought was from the Iron Age. He managed to unearth the remains of 4 houses and many artifacts from 2 villages. The villages had been buried under sand, so everything was really well preserved. Carbon dating wasn't a thing back then yet, so it was tricky to tell the exact age of the villages. Almost a century later, with new tech, researchers were finally able to tell that the place was actually from Neolithic times. You can still see stone dressers and box beds in the prehistoric houses. Archaeologists and historians working on the famous Terracotta Army think that it might have been inspired by or modeled on ancient Greek sculptures. It would mean there was a cultural contact between East and West much earlier than we thought, long before the Silk Road trade route. There was probably Western influence in China during the era of its first emperor, who took the throne in 246 before the current era. Before that time, China didn't have a tradition of building life-sized sculptures. Earlier terracotta soldiers were much smaller, less than 10 inches tall. Greek artists might have even been present to train Chinese sculptors. If someone finally invents time travel and you hop on a trip to the past, you won't recognize many of the things you know and love today. The Statue of Liberty and the Egyptian pyramids, some basic gadgets like the remote control and your laptop, and even the corn you have for lunch have all changed beyond recognition. When the pyramids were originally built in ancient Egypt and Giza and other places, they didn't look sandy brown at all. All of them were covered with white limestone. If you had seen them under the hot African sun, you'd have to look away. That's how smooth and shiny they were. Builders used around 6 million tons of this material for the Great Pyramid of Giza alone. It's the largest one you can still see on your trip to Egypt. The local rules were quite a thrifty crowd, and they reused some of the casing stones for other construction projects. A massive earthquake in the 14th century has also loosened some of the stones, so you won't see a lot of limestone, but some of it is still there, on top of the Pyramid of Khafre in Giza. It looks like it has a second peak on top of the first. In ancient times, all pyramids used to have capstones called pyramidions, covered in a mix of gold and silver. Most of them have been lost over the centuries, but you can still see a few of them at museums. They show images of Egyptian deities. The pyramids were probably modeled after a sacred pointed stone, the benben. It represented the rays of the sun. Now, lifting heavy rocks wasn't so simple without the tech we have today. I guess you'll agree with me if you helped your friends move at least once, and they made you carry the couch. But those smart Egyptians of the past thought of that and chose the pyramid shape. It lets the weight distribute evenly throughout the whole thing. The Statue of Liberty has also had a major makeover since it was first unveiled in 1886. Believe it or not, it used to be a shiny brown color, just like a penny. 20 years later, it changed its color to green. It wasn't a fashion statement, but a chemical reaction. The statue is covered with hundreds of thin copper sheets. When copper reacts with air, it naturally forms a protective layer called verdigris. This layer protects what's under it from corrosion, and that's why statues and other things made of copper, brass, and bronze can last so long. When Lady Liberty first turned green, people in authority decided it would be a good idea to paint it all over. It was way before social media, so you couldn't just drop an angry comment under the post describing the idea. But they wrote about it in the local newspapers, and the public didn't love the idea. Then the Times interviewed a copper and bronze manufacturer, and he confirmed they shouldn't repaint it, because removing the protective layer would mean destroying the statue. Over the years, people have suggested painting Lady Liberty several times, but no one has ever done it. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine that lady in any other color, so I guess it's for the better. You love bananas as much as I do? Next time you enjoy a juicy soft one, remember you gotta thank selective breeding for that texture. The original wild bananas had many large, hard seeds and not so much delicious pulp. And hey, who doesn't like a sugary watermelon? It has a history of over 5,000 years, and it used to have bitter, yellowish white flesh and was really tricky to open. Selective breeding saved the day again. and watermelons got way sweeter. Japanese scientists went further and invented the seedless version. Corn's grandmother is a Mexican grass called teosinte. The kernels in this grass were small and hard to get. Farmers from many thousands of years ago saved the seeds only of those plants that were larger or tastier, or with kernels that were easier to grind. Thanks, my friends, for giving us the corn that's edible and even delicious. And just imagine, wild avocados were so small that they could easily fit in the palm of your hand. The pit in them was so large you wouldn't find much edible material inside. They also had a much harder shell than the ones we're used to. You probably wouldn't get a lot of work done without your beloved computer today, but I can't tell you exactly whom to thank for this invention. The ABC from 1942 is one of the contendants for the title of the first computer. It's short for the Atanasoff Berry computer, named after its inventors at Iowa State University. The ABC weighed over 700 pounds. Yep, yours must be way lighter than that. That big boy consisted of around 300 vacuum tubes and had a rotating drum, a little bigger than a paint can, and had small capacitors on it. A capacitor is a gadget that can store an electric charge, like a battery. The ABC could solve problems with up to 29 different variables to help scientists save some time. Like modern computers, it used binary digits, ones and zeros, to represent all numbers and data. Because of that, it was possible to do the calculations electronically. And now, my favorite part. The ABC finished one operation about every 15 seconds. Just for you to compare, it's millions of operations per second now. Unlike the tech we use today, the ABC did not have a changeable stored program, so the program could only do a single task at a time. An operator had to write down the intermediate answer and then dial that back into the computer. Sounds like another reason to be happy we live in the 21st century. That remote control you use for all sorts of appliances has gone a long way too. Nikola Tesla, who gave us alternating current, designed one of the first wireless remote controls back in 1898. He named his invention teleautomation and demonstrated it on a miniature boat controlled by radio waves. The boat had a little metal antenna attached to it. Tesla sent signals to the boat using a box with a lever and a telegraph key, which was his version of a remote control. Those signals set electrical contacts on the boat into motion and moved the rudder and the propeller, and Tesla was controlling the boat. The concept of the remote control soon spread to other gadgets. The first television remote control followed in 1950. It was designed by the Zenith Radio Corporation called LazyBone. Don't take it personally, please. This LazyBone had a massive cable that was attached to the TV set, and those who tried it didn't fall in love with the invention because they tripped over that cord. I feel your pain, my friends. If you live or work on one of the top floors, you gotta love this one. Meet the first passenger elevator. It traveled at the speed of 40 feet per minute. Not the fastest, I know, compared to today's record, which is 40 feet per second. But hey, it was built back in 1857 in New York and was more of a tourist attraction than a necessity. The elevator had a steam engine hidden in the basement of a 5-story building. 3 years later, they shut it down because the public didn't appreciate it. Otis Tufts filed the first patent for a vertical railway around the same time. His invention included an actual car with a bench inside for people to sit on. Sounds like a great spot to hang out with friends to me. What do you say? Then they started adding elevators to luxurious hotels around the world. They were entire rooms with a rich design, upholstered seats and mirrors on the walls, and sometimes even a small chandelier. There was an obligatory operator who'd close the door and the car would start its super slow ascent. It was still more about style than about speed, so I guess I'd choose the stairs. You're heading to Spain with a team of archaeologists to try to find some ancient artifacts. You get lucky and uncover one of the greatest treasures of the Iberian Bronze Age. Iberian refers to the Bronze Age culture of Portugal and Spain. So you find and unearth coins, jewelry, vases, vessels, and two pretty strange items. One is something like a part of a scepter, and the other resembles a bracelet. And you know what's strange about them? They're connected with space. In 1963, several miles away from the city of Vienna, Spain, scientists discovered the treasure of Vienna, one of the most significant gold hoards from the Bronze Age. Interestingly, are there bronze treasures from the Golden Age? Never mind. All the gold found dates back to sometime between 1500 and 1200 BCE, except for that scepter and bracelet. They were made by inhabitants of another planet, so their production date is unknown. Okay, that's a joke. However, a small part of this joke is true. When scientists studied the found gold, they discovered that those two items were made of iron. So what, you might think? Well, the catch is that in the Bronze Age, people didn't mine or manufacture iron. Work with this metal began around 850 BCE, about 400 to 700 years after the creation of the treasure of Vienna. How is this possible? A clue to this mystery can be found in ancient Egypt. In the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, an iron dagger was found, which was also made of similar iron. But this dagger was much more valuable than all the others. And that's because it was made from a space object, a meteorite. Yeah, that bracelet and scepter were also made of meteoritic iron. Its difference from Earth metal is that cosmic iron has a high nickel content, so it all makes sense. People from the Bronze Age couldn't mine iron from the deep bowels of our planet, but nothing prevented them from collecting iron falling from the sky. Just imagine how cool it is to have jewelry or a dagger made of material that has traveled millions of years through the vast expanses of space. Perhaps it even contains particles of an ancient extinct star. Today, these two artifacts from the treasure of Vienna are the oldest recorded items in the Iberian Peninsula made of meteoritic iron. Now, with everything in its place, you can turn your attention to all the wealth of the treasure of Vienna. It contains 66 items: bowls, bracelets, bottles, gold jewelry, 3 silver bottles, and an amber gold button. 22 pounds of ancient gold. People hid it, and only after 3,000 years we were able to discover it. This archaeologist's dream can be found in the Vienna Museum, where exhibits from different time periods are presented, from prehistoric times like 50,000 years ago to the present day. Items from the Iberian period, from the Roman period, from the Arab civilization. You can find not only jewelry and coins, but there are also remnants of columns, ceramics, and other architectural artifacts. The collection is considered one of the most important prehistoric treasures of Europe. And the coolest thing is that you can see it all with your own eyes for just €2, which is about $2. Go to Vienna, find the museum, and enjoy. Hey buddy, I heard you have a metal detector. Could you help me find a hammer I left somewhere in the field? Your old farmer friend asks. You take a metal detector and go searching, but instead of a hammer, you find hundreds, even thousands of silver coins worth $2 million. You're so happy that the farmer lost that hammer, and now you're rich. Stop! Considering that this land belongs to the farmer, would you tell him about the find or take it with you? In reality, neither of these options happened. In 1992, Eric Laws was helping a farmer search for a lost hammer in a field near Hoxney, Suffolk, England. The metal detector stumbled upon a hidden treasure, a huge one. There were silver spoons, gold jewelry, more than 500 gold coins, and about 14,000 silver ones. Eric Laws accidentally discovered the largest collection of gold and silver from the late Roman period in Britain. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, he and the farmer didn't receive the treasure. It's now in the British Museum. Let's move away from the farmer's field to somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. Imagine you're a scuba diver. There was a strong storm yesterday, but now with the water calm, you dive in and discover the seabed covered with gold dinars. This story happened in 2015. The coins which the storm brought to the shore might have been minted even before the First Crusade that started in 1096. This collection is one of the most impressive archaeological finds in the world. All these treasures surely can make the heads of those who find them spin, but they end up in a museum. And that's a good thing, because such wealth can drive a person crazy. A metal detector and a diving suit helped people discover ancient treasures. What's next? How about a dog? Yes, it could be perhaps a great replacement for a metal detector, by the way. So in 2013, two people were walking their dog in Northern California on their property. Suddenly, they discovered a rusty can filled with coins minted from 1847 to 1894. There were about 1,500 coins, and they all were gold. Another chance for a carefree, rich future? Not this time. The find caused a lot of controversy among specialists. There was one version, according to which these coins could have been stolen from the US Mint. But later, the US Mint debunked this suggestion as they'd never had this gold in their storage. Anyway, it's interesting what the point was in hiding it all in someone else's yard. Some thief risked their freedom and life to get rich. When they succeeded, they just hid the coins as if they never existed. What a strange deal. Coins, jewelry, meteorite items, it's all cool. But let's end our video with something grand and epic. Archaeologists were conducting research near the Mediterranean coast of Egypt and discovered a treasure trove inside a sunken temple and sanctuary. Despite the waves, earthquakes, and seawater, the massive find was preserved in a not bad condition. The temple was built a very long time ago and collapsed in the middle of the 2nd century BCE. It was an important structure in ancient Egypt. People considered this place holy. Pharaohs came to the temple to seek help from the higher powers of Egyptian mythology to obtain titles for their rule. Titles of kings of the universe. For many people, this place was like the center of the universe, and now it lies forgotten on the seabed, almost ruined. Time spares nothing. Researchers found out the temple had been part of an ancient port city. A long time ago, an earthquake occurred in this area and destroyed the city. Tidal waves softened the ground and dragged the town into the Mediterranean Sea. While studying the temple, scientists found many secret treasures there: silver ceremonial instruments, gold jewelry, and alabaster vessels. In past times, people used them to store perfumes or greasy ointments called unguents. Perhaps in ancient Egypt, they weren't bad in the field of cosmetology. Near the temple, archaeologists discovered a Greek sanctuary. Apparently, the Greeks living in Egypt or coming here on business wanted to pay tribute to Aphrodite, so they created a small building in her honor. In that place, archaeologists found bronze and ceramic artifacts from different cultures. Scientists found out that the Greeks had permission to trade in the Egyptian city and even be its residents. It seems pharaohs living around 600 BCE were favorable to the Greeks. The profession of an archaeologist is very exciting. But what would you do if you found some ancient treasure? Before answering this question, find out what law applies to such finds in your country.
An ancient computer stood dormant underwater for thousands of years. When it was first discovered in the early 1900s, people confused it with a boring lump of metal and wood. But once it was properly studied, the Antikythera mechanism shook up what we knew of the ancient Greeks and their knowledge of astronomy. Is it really a computer? Depends on what you consider one to be. We know that the first mechanical device of this kind was designed in 1822 and could only help with simple calculation. The Antikythera mechanism also doesn't have a keyboard or screen. It's made out of 3 bronze pieces featuring intricate designs, gears that resemble those of a clock, and a ring with degrees, similar to a protractor. No other similar devices can be traced so far back in time. X-rays needed to be invented before scientists could figure out this device. They soon learned that the Antikythera mechanism was probably used to track stars and planets. Here's how it worked. Inside its wooden case were lots of tiny gears. They weren't for telling time, but rather for predicting astronomical events. It gave the user unique knowledge of where every planet, the sun, and the moon would be at any given time. By turning a button, it was set in motion, and it would show how the celestial bodies moved. One of its biggest mysteries is those planetary pointers. It's common knowledge these days that planets owe their specific movements because they're orbiting the Sun for the most part. Some believe the Greeks back then weren't that advanced with their astronomy to know this. A few ancient Greek scholars proposed the idea of the Sun being at the center of the known universe, but it wasn't a widely accepted theory. The reason why is simple. If the Earth was spinning on its axis and revolving around the Sun, why can't we feel it move? Some parts of the Antikythera mechanism may still be at the bottom of the sea, while others may be lost forever. So we may never know the truth about its purpose. The official story about the first battery? That it was invented somewhere around the 1800s. It was made of interlaying copper and zinc discs that had a piece of cloth between them, dipped in a special chemical concoction that conducts electricity. Some archaeologists claim they've uncovered a battery 10 times older, called the Battery of Baghdad. So it could be that the technology for inventing batteries was hiding under our noses. At first glance, the ancient Battery of Baghdad looks like a random clay pot. What makes it special is its composition, a set of weirdly nested artifacts. Inside this pot was a copper cylinder, enveloping an iron rod. The rod would have poked through the jar's lid. The artist and archaeologist who found this unusual device never left a detailed account of where, when, or how he stumbled upon it. But the widely accepted theory is that the object was unearthed in what's now known as Baghdad in Iraq. Another thing most specialists can agree on is that it can be traced back to the ancient city of Ctesiphon. Its exact age, though, remains a mystery. Some say it's over 2,000 years old. Others say it's a mere 1,400 years old. Even at the later end of the spectrum, it still significantly predates the first electric battery that's just a couple of centuries old. Since there's no official record accompanying the artifact, there's a chance we'll never know what its purpose was. So where did this idea of it being a battery come from? It all has to do with those two metals found inside with differing electropotentials, which is a key component of batteries. There's also evidence suggesting that the jar once held an ionic solution, acting as an electrolyte, the substance needed in batteries to carry the electric current. Tests on the jar's corrosion hint that it may have contained substances similar to vinegar. Even if we agree that it's an ancient battery, this artifact could have only generated a mere volt or so. But the ancient humans didn't have TVs or dishwashers, so what did they need a battery for? A lot of theories came up. Throughout history, civilizations have explored the applications of electricity in medicine. For instance, the ancient Greeks found relief from pain by placing electric fish on their feet. Ow! Another intriguing idea says such batteries were placed inside statues to create a buzzing effect, adding a mystical dimension to spiritual practices. There was even an idea that suggested the battery was used in gilding, the process of coating one metal with another. This method was used by jewelers back in the day. If it wasn't used for providing electricity, the Baghdad battery was probably a container for special scrolls. Then the iron rod would have been the core for the scroll, wrapped around it before being placed inside the copper tube. In other parts of the world, it's a little coin that seems to have time-traveled. In 1957, an interesting piece of metal was discovered in Maine by an amateur archaeologist. At first, he believed it was just a basic English coin from the 1100s. Years went by before the coin was properly studied, until 1978, when a local magazine decided to feature the coin in an article titled, "Were the English the First to Discover America?" A coin expert from London took one look and knew something was off. The coin didn't look English at all, but rather like a Norse penny, dating back to the late 11th century. How did a Viking coin end up in Maine? A Norwegian coin expert then paid a visit to the Maine State Museum to inspect the artifact up close, and confirmed its authenticity. How it got there remains a mystery. Some speculate that it traveled through trade routes, exchanging hands until it wound up in Maine. Others think it might have been part of a larger Viking settlement that we've yet to uncover. But then there are the skeptics who think there's something fishy. That initial amateur that discovered the coin had some connections that could have helped him get his hands on a Norse penny. Plus, around the same time, there was a whole bunch of Viking-related hoaxes floating around. The idea of Vikings cruising around America isn't entirely new, though. Icelandic sagas have hinted at it for centuries. But it wasn't until the discovery of an archaeological site in Newfoundland that people started taking it seriously. It still doesn't confirm if the penny was legit or not. The city of Rockwall in Texas is famous for its live music and family-friendly vibe. But it got its name from a curious rock formation still shrouded in mystery. Beneath the city's surface lies a series of hard mineral stones stacked in a way that resembles a massive wall of rocks. For more than a century and a half, people have pondered the origins of this mysterious structure. Could it be the handiwork of ancient humans, left behind as a testament to their ingenuity? Or is it simply a natural phenomenon, shaped by the forces of geology over millions of years? The formation has been spotted in over 10 different locations around the city, stretching both above and below ground. In their quest for answers, scientists have conducted various tests on the rocks that make up the wall. One geologist suggested back in 1901 that the formation was just a naturally occurring sandstone dike. Subsequent studies have supported this idea, with experts from the University of Texas at Dallas confirming that the rocks formed over millions of years through the deposition and hardening of sediment. Despite the scientific consensus, there are still those who believe there's more to the Rockwall formation. Tales of steps, archways, and even corridors have circulated for decades, supported by old newspaper reports and local folklore. Some claim to have seen strange markings on the rocks, while others speak of mysterious metal objects embedded in them. The scientific explanation could be that the supposed steps and archways are likely just illusions created by the natural fracturing of the rock. As for the metal objects, it's believed they are simply concentrations of iron-bearing minerals. It doesn't explicitly show ancient humans put them there. Whether the Rockwall formation was crafted by ancient hands or shaped by natural forces, it remains a cherished part of Rockwall's identity. The ancient Indian texts mention beautifully decorated chariots or entire palaces called vimanas that could take off and, in a matter of seconds, fly away as far as space. Some people believe these vimanas only existed in Indian mythology, but it's also possible that they were based on a real technology that had been lost over the centuries. According to the Vedas, ancient Indian religious texts, there was the elephant vimana with several engines and many other types named after animals and birds. There was one for local travel, one for visiting different countries, and one for traveling to the moon and various planets. They could develop a great speed. One vimana had the superpower of invisibility. Another one was shaped like a sphere and was built on the winds produced by Mercury. This vimana was said to generate an enormous ray like the sun and make noise like the storm's thunder. All the vimanas were unbreakable and perfect for attacks on foes. Now, to operate a vimana, you'd need to know a lot of stuff, pretty much like today's airplane pilots. 32 secrets in total. They'd cover the aircraft structure and the secrets of taking off and maneuvering without crashing. That's a good thing. The pilot was also expected to know how to be seen and unseen, how to be hidden, how to be quick, how to manage contractions and expansion, and many other tricks. To hide the flying machine from foes, the pilot was instructed to move to the 8th atmospheric layer above the Earth and use the power of dark solar rays. This instruction might sound a bit weird, but there were others, more realistic ones, which still make sense in modern aeronautics. There are sections of ancient texts on the vimanas that focus on details like flight paths, pilot training, navigation, and even suitable clothes for pilots and recommended food for long flights. There was also a lot of technical detail about the use of heat-absorbing metals, the metals utilized, and melting points. The supporters of the theory that the Vimanas were more than just myths are sure that the ancient Indians would unlikely go into all these details just for a beautiful story. So, the flying palaces might have been real and way ahead of their time, like many other great Indian inventions. Back in the 6th century BCE, an Indian physician named Sushruta basically wrote the original guide to medicine and surgery. They even called him the father of surgery for his work. Sushruta laid down the details on hundreds of medicinal plants and described complex surgical procedures. He gave instructions on nose reconstructions and skin transplants from one part of the body to another. The original method of rhinoplasty, which involved taking a piece of skin from the forehead to reconstruct the nose, is still used today. But back then, it had a slightly different purpose than surprising your followers on social media. Those nose jobs helped out folks who had lost their noses as punishment for crimes or in fights. Now, you gotta thank an ancient Indian math prodigy for the invention of zero. It might not seem like a big deal, but without it, we would have no binary system and no computers. People before the 5th century CE were only thinking about some sort of a sign to indicate nothing. The invention made addition, subtraction, and other mathematical operations a whole lot easier. You can see the oldest zero in existence carved in the wall of a temple in Gwalior, India. The Indus Valley Civilization was using rulers in 1500 BCE and earlier. Made from ivory, these rulers were found during excavations in what is present-day Pakistan and northwestern India. They were widely used in architecture with amazing accuracy. They had units corresponding to slightly over 1 inch that were marked with precise subdivisions within 5/1000ths of an inch. The next invention is more of a concept than a physical item. Standardization is all about setting the rules based on a bunch of people, things, or interests. One of its cool applications that we've all gotten used to is standard weights. Whether you're using pounds or kilograms, you need these universal measurements for weight, right? For this, we owe a big shout-out to the merchants from the Indus Valley Civilization who lived around 4,000 years ago. They were measuring everything from food grains to fancy luxury goods using these standardized weights. And their weights had decimal and binary mathematical systems going on. They didn't have high-tech gear, but they pulled off some serious precision using complex calculations and even sand for construction. Their art of standardization made its way to Persia and Central Asia, basically becoming the global weight-watching standard. So, if yoga is your go-to exercise, you definitely have a personal reason to appreciate the ancient Indian geniuses. Over 5,000 years ago, during the rule of the Indus-Sarasvati civilization in northern India, yoga was first mentioned in the Vedas. Yoga was refined and shaped over the centuries until it grew into a massive teaching with over 200 sacred writings dedicated to this way of obtaining enlightenment. At the beginning of the current era, yoga got a new trajectory thanks to a Hindu writer who laid down a system of yoga in his text, the Yoga Sutras. It became a whole-body rejuvenation, a life-extending practice with poses that you are still doing on the mat today. Yoga has reached the Western world only in the 19th century, and it caught on like wildfire. Chess, the all-time top game for intellectuals, is also an Indian invention. Its ancestor was called Chaturanga, and it was a strategic board game that started gaining popularity around 3,000 years before the current era. This early Indian version of chess was played by 4 people, not 2, and had 64 squares. Each player had 8 pieces, ranging from pawns to kings, bishops to knights, and there was no standard 6-faced dice. They rolled with an oblong one. Players facing off were actually allies, forming 2 teams based on the direction they sat. Chess that we know and love today was first mentioned in ancient Indian literature in a legend. It said that the wife of a villain called Ravana had invented the game to amuse him. Now, the word shampoo comes from the Hindi word, which means to soothe or knead. The substance was invented in India in 1762 and was originally used for head massages, hence the name. The first shampoo was made of natural oils and herbs. British traders fell in love with the idea and brought it back with them to England. It took years for the original head massage oil to evolve into shampoo as we know it today, but it's still an Indian invention. Unlike the ancient Greeks, who wore animal skins, the Indians started cultivating cotton back in the 5th and 4th centuries before the current era. They used cotton threads to produce fabrics that soon became a huge hit in the Mediterranean and beyond. Jute and wool also have their origins in India. Cashmere, the finest and most exclusive type of wool, actually comes from the Kashmir region of India. Buttons that sit proudly on that cashmere cardigan of yours also have ancient Indian origins. Some 5,000 years ago, the Indus Valley civilization started cutting seashells into geometric shapes with tiny holes in them. First, they were just decorations, but then people started using them to fasten clothes. Now, when you think about radio communication pioneers, Marconi's name usually steals the spotlight. He got a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909 for his groundbreaking radio work. But there's an unsung hero in the radio waves game, and his name is Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose. He spilled the beans on radio communication way back in 1895. He shot an electromagnetic wave across 75 feet at the town hall in Calcutta, and it went through walls, rang a bell, and even set off some gunpowder. Marconi took a page from Bose's book, using his invention, the Mercury Coherer, as a blueprint for his own two-way radio. Bose didn't patent his genius creation, so he only got his credit a century later. Most people know that pyramids were built as grand tombs for the pharaohs, designed to ensure they had a smooth journey to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, was constructed for the pharaoh Khufu. But what most people don't know is that this whole pyramid building trend started right here with the step pyramid of Djoser about 4,700 years ago. This massive structure was built for Pharaoh Djoser, a ruler from Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It rises 7 layers high above the ground and stands about 200 feet tall. We think of it today as a phenomenal architectural project, but for ancient Egyptians, the step pyramid of Djoser turned out to be more like a massive experiment, a trial run, if you will, to perfect their building skills before they moved on to even more ambitious pyramids. Reaching new heights is super exciting, but the real mystery is what is going on below the ground. In this pyramid's underground labyrinth, there is a network of tunnels stretching about 3.5 miles long, and some researchers believe these tunnels might have been part of a sophisticated water system that could completely change what we think about pyramid construction. Let's talk about this massive complex located in Saqqara. Surrounding the pyramid, there's what's known as a dry moat, a continuous trench that is up to 164 feet wide and almost 2 miles long. It forms a sort of rectangular shape around the pyramid. This trench has an average depth of about 65 feet. Now, if you were to add up all the earth and rock they dug out to create this moat, it would be about 10 times the volume of the step pyramid itself. For the longest time, people just assumed this trench was nothing more than a huge quarry, a place where they dug up stone and clay to build the step pyramid. Makes sense, right? But when you take a closer look, it doesn't add up. The trench is too narrow and deep to be practical for mining, and its layout doesn't match anything we know about ancient Egyptian quarrying methods. Plus, some sections of the trench are actually covered with a rocky ceiling, which would have made it nearly impossible to use as a quarry. Another theory suggests that the dry moat had some kind of spiritual significance. Maybe it was a sacred place, where souls of nobles gathered to serve the late king in the afterlife. There are even niches in the walls that work as a hint at this spiritual function. But most researchers believe that this purpose likely developed much later, long after the complex was built for Djoser. So what was the moat really designed for? In 2020, a researcher came up with a pretty intriguing idea. It is possible that this trench was actually designed to collect and manage water, especially after heavy rainfalls. Now, that makes sense when you consider the location. The moat sits in an area that could easily have been flooded by runoff water from nearby plains. This could also explain why the trench wasn't used for new graves until much later when the climate became drier and less prone to flooding. The story becomes even more intriguing, as this trench appears to be part of a larger, more complex hydraulic system within the Djoser complex. It is like the trench has several compartments, carefully carved out of the rock and connected by tunnels. These compartments likely served as a part of a water treatment system, where water would flow from one compartment to the next, getting cleaner as it moved along. Now, here is where things start to tie into the pyramid itself. The Djoser complex has a series of underground shafts, and some researchers think that water from the moat's deep trench might have been used to power a hydraulic lift system. And this giant water-powered elevator could have been used to raise the heavy stones needed to build the pyramid. It worked like a volcano, but instead of lava, water did the heavy lifting. Imagine a big deep hole in the ground at the center of the pyramid site. Inside this hole, there was a huge wooden platform, kind of like a giant raft that could move up and down. When the workers wanted to lift a heavy stone, they would fill the hole with water. As the water rose, the wooden platform started to float up, carrying the stone with it, almost like a giant water-powered elevator. When the stone reached the right height, the workers slid it off the platform and onto the pyramid. The idea is that water from the deep trench, after being cleaned and filtered, would flow into these shafts. A massive float, possibly made of wood, would then rise as the water filled the shaft, lifting the stones up to where they were needed for construction. Once the stone was in place, they'd let the water out, lowering the platform back down to the bottom, ready to lift the next stone. This fancy hydraulic lift system could have been a game changer, making the whole building process a lot faster and more efficient without using a lot of workforce. It is like the ancient Egyptians were already embracing the whole idea of work smarter, not harder. But of course, not everyone is on board with this theory. Some experts argue that the area where the step pyramid of Djoser was built couldn't have held enough water from occasional rains to maintain such a fancy hydraulic system. The main theory suggests that, in the past, there might have been some kind of lake nearby that would have filled up after a period of rain, and this lake could have supplied water to the complex's hydraulic system. But there is no mention of such a lake in any ancient Egyptian writings, so it might be more of a what-if situation than a reality. And then there's the issue of the hard work itself. Remember when I said this method could have allowed the ancient builders to raise stones with far less effort? Well, that might not be entirely true. According to some experts, just building this hydraulic device would have required a lot more heavy work than simply moving the stone blocks using good old-fashioned manpower. And let's not forget, the step pyramid of Djoser is like a baby pyramid compared to those that came later. The stones used for Djoser's pyramid weighed, on average, about 660 pounds each, which is nothing compared to the more than 2.5-ton blocks used later for the pyramid of Chephren. If this cool water lift theory gets completely ruled out, we still need to explain how this pyramid was built in the first place. To answer that, we need to rewind a bit and talk about the original plans. See, before Djoser's tomb became a pyramid, the idea was to construct a simple mastaba. This type of tomb was pretty common in earlier periods, a flat-roofed, rectangular structure with sloping sides. But after the original mastaba was finished, they decided to expand it a bit by adding more layers on top. And then they added even more layers, until the construction reached 6 distinctive steps, each one smaller than the previous. And they probably did all this by raising those heavy stones using ramps, not a water-powered elevator. There is still so much we don't know about the step pyramid of Djoser. More research is definitely needed to fully understand how this system worked, or if it even existed at all. But the idea of using water to help build the pyramid adds a whole new layer to our understanding of ancient Egyptian engineering. It's a powerful reminder of just how clever and resourceful those builders were, using the natural landscape and the power of water to create one of the most iconic monuments in history.
It was 1905. A 13-year-old boy named Ben Sands grabs his lantern and slips into the Craighead Caverns in Sweetwater, Tennessee, a place he already knew like the back of his hand. But that day felt different. He was in the mood for a little more adventure, so he left the main trail behind and went deeper into the shadows. That's when our brave teen decided to squeeze into a narrow, muddy tunnel, barely as wide as a bicycle tire. He crawled for what felt like forever. Then, after about 40 feet, he finally popped out the other side and couldn't believe what was happening. He had water up to his knees. Yep, he was standing in the middle of a massive underground lake. The chamber was so huge, the light from his lantern barely reached the walls. Then, he had a great idea. He started tossing mud balls into the darkness as far as he could, just to test the ground ahead. All he heard in return was splash, splash, splash. It was all water. What Ben had discovered would later be named the Lost Sea, which is considered America's largest underground lake. It's also the second largest non-glacial subterranean lake in the world. The only one bigger is Dragon's Breath Cave, hidden on private land in Namibia. The underground lake in Craighead Caverns is so massive and mysterious, we haven't fully explored it. Thanks to top-notch equipment, divers have discovered more than 13 acres of water-filled rooms beneath the surface. But the visible part of the Lost Sea stretches only about 4 acres. One time, a brave diver entered one of the submerged chambers with a sonar device in hand. This kind of equipment works by sending out sound pulses underwater. When those sound waves hit something, they bounce back. Then, the device measures how long it takes for the echo to return and calculates how far away the object is. So, he was confident he could map the whole thing using sonar. But he also played it safe. He hugged the wall the entire time, the only way to make sure he'd find his way back. As he took surroundings in every direction, the results came back the same. Nothing but more water. To this day, no one has found the end of the lake, but they're not done yet. Each expedition reveals new chambers, new tunnels, and new mysteries. The funny part is, Craighead Caverns was already a well-known spot long before Ben stumbled across the long sea. And over the years, this cave has had some pretty unusual and kinda eccentric uses. The first people we know who used the cave were the Cherokee. The upper chamber served as a meeting place for their councils. And we know that because a wide range of Native American artifacts, including pottery, arrowheads, and jewelry, have been found in one of the rooms. Then, between 1939 and 1940, the cavern was turned into a mushroom farm. A few years later, in 1947, someone decided to build a wooden floor right inside the cave. That's when the underground nightclub known as the Cavern Tavern was born. And here's another fun fact. One of the cave's earliest visitors wasn't a person at all. It was a giant jaguar. It made its way deep into the cave about 20,000 years ago and apparently got lost in the darkness. It wandered for days before falling into a crevice far from any light. Some of its bones were found in 1939, and today they're on display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. But I suppose nothing that's ever happened in the cave quite compares to what lies deeper inside. If you're feeling brave enough to explore its depths, you can actually take a boat tour across its underwater lake. That's right, there are excursion boats inside the cave, all powered by electric motors. It is probably a dark, cold, and strangely peaceful journey. And just below the boat, you will see some big rainbow trout swimming around. They weren't always there. People actually brought them in and released them into the underground lake. And according to visitors, the guides explained that it was all part of a bigger plan. They wanted to see if the fish would find an exit and reveal a hidden tunnel to another body of water. But the fish stayed put. So now, visitors have something else to look at during the ride. And since there's no natural food in the cave, the trout have to be fed by hand every single day. Guides also mentioned that one of the most fascinating features of the caverns isn't the lake or the trout. It's a crystalline structure known as anthodites, also called cave flowers. These are fragile, spiky clusters, and they are rare. Really rare. Now, here is a question. If Ben Sands discovered a lost sea out of nowhere, does that mean we could still find something similar? Well, yes. There are probably still many underground bodies of water hidden around the world. In 2016, for example, a massive reservoir of water was discovered deep beneath the Uturuncu volcano located in the Andes. But it's not like a calm, friendly lake. The water is dissolved into partially molten rock, so it's stunningly hot. We're talking about a temperature close to 1,830 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, in 2021, scientists found a huge thermal lake inside a cave in southern Albania. And in 2024, they returned to the same spot with more advanced measurement equipment. They found that the lake measures 454 feet long and 138 feet wide. That pretty much confirmed it is the biggest hidden lake of its kind we know about. Also, in 2024, a group of workers from a travel agency was exploring Tung Cave in Vietnam when they suddenly came across a mysterious lake, hidden way down in a part of the cave that hardly anyone ever sees. Its water reflects a transparent emerald or greenish color, making it look unbelievably beautiful. This spot will probably be open to tourism very soon. Alright, finding hidden lakes inside caves or beneath volcanoes is one thing, but finding a hidden ocean inside the Earth, that is a whole different story. And believe it or not, it actually happened not long ago. But you can't swim in its waters, for two big reasons. First, it's hidden about 400 miles underground. And second, the water isn't in liquid form like a normal sea. Instead, it's trapped inside solid rocks. Sounds strange, but let me explain. Back in 2014, researchers found deep pockets of magma located around 400 miles beneath North America. And that's a pretty strong sign there's water down there. But how? Down there, scientists discovered a mineral called ringwoodite, which only forms under extremely high pressure, the kind you would find deep within the Earth's mantle. And inside the structure of ringwoodite, they found water, not in puddles or pools, but trapped inside the mineral itself. Ringwoodite acts like a sponge, holding water within its crystal structure. And when scientists ran the numbers, they realized something staggering. The amount of water trapped in this mineral could be 3 times greater than all the oceans on Earth combined. And that is huge. Not just in size, but the actual discovery is huge, because it might confirm a theory that's been around for decades. That a massive reservoir of water exists deep beneath Earth's crust. Geologists believe this deep reservoir plays a key role in Earth's water cycle. It might be responsible for volcanic activity, the movement of tectonic plates, and even how water first appeared on the planet's surface. Instead of arriving on comets or asteroids, Earth's water might have always been here, slowly seeping out over billions of years from deep underground.
For centuries, humanity has believed in a linear path of evolution, a slow, steady climb from primitive survival to modern innovation. But what if that story is incomplete? What if the turning points in our development weren't purely natural? Roughly 6 million years ago, an ancestor of modern apes rose to its feet, setting in motion a journey that would eventually lead to Homo sapiens. For hundreds of thousands of years, progress was glacial. We tamed fire, carved basic tools, and lived hand-to-mouth existences. Then, just 20,000 years ago, everything changed. In a span shorter than a blink in evolutionary terms, we went from hunter-gatherers to architects of vast megalithic temples, builders of empires, and eventually, explorers of space. How do we make sense of that? Some argue we can't, not with conventional science alone. This explosion of intelligence and innovation has led to alternative theories. One of the most provocative, that we had help from beings far more advanced than ourselves. Welcome to the world of the Anunnaki. They're more than myth. They're the center of a sprawling theory that suggests humanity's greatest leaps weren't entirely human. According to ancient Sumerian texts, these so-called gods came not from the heavens in a spiritual sense, but from the sky in the most literal way imaginable, another planet. And they didn't just visit, they stayed, they ruled, and perhaps most importantly, they altered us. Long before Egypt erected its pyramids, or Stonehenge crowned the English countryside, the Sumerians were building cities, inventing writing, crafting legal codes, and mapping the stars with uncanny accuracy. Their civilization bloomed in Mesopotamia nearly 7,000 years ago, and it left behind cuneiform tablets that continue to baffle and inspire. These records tell of beings called the Anunnaki, translated as those who came from heaven to earth. They introduced tools, language, agriculture, and even mathematics. But the texts also hint at a darker truth. These beings didn't just uplift humanity. They enslaved it. Why? One word: gold. Ancient records describe massive gold mining operations that predated technological society. But here's the twist. To early humans, gold was worthless. It had no utility, no exchange value, no role in survival. Yet we dug for it with obsessive intensity. According to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki needed gold, not for jewelry, but for survival. Their home planet, Nibiru, was dying. Its atmosphere was decaying, and gold particles, when dispersed in the air, could reflect solar radiation and purify environmental conditions. Earth had gold, lots of it. And so, the Anunnaki came. At first, they did the labor themselves, but mining Earth's crust was exhausting. Frustrated and desperate, they considered a more efficient solution: genetic engineering. If they could merge their DNA with that of early humans, they could create a workforce suited to the task, strong, obedient, and intelligent. Enki, one of the Anunnaki leaders, took the lead. Early experiments were monstrous, deformed hybrids that echo legends of giants, cyclops, and mythic beastlists. Many were destroyed, others abandoned. But eventually, success came. Using one of their own as a surrogate, they implanted a fertilized egg, part Anunnaki, part hominin. The result was a child named Adamu. Sound familiar? To many, Adamu is the precursor to the biblical Adam. The parallels between religious creation stories and Sumerian myth are too sharp to ignore. Created in our image, from clay, the Sumerians were telling a story that would echo through ages, morphing into sacred texts and oral traditions around the globe. Adamu and his descendants became laborers, building a society under Anunnaki rule. But something strange happened. These hybrids didn't just follow. They learned, they questioned, they grew in number and complexity. Eventually, they became us. Here's where the timeline warps. Homo sapiens have existed for over 300,000 years. Yet for most of that time, we were indistinguishable from animals in both behavior and cognition. Then, seemingly overnight, we developed art, architecture, religion, governance, and science. No smooth curve, just a spike. How? Some point to climate shifts or population booms, but others look to Nibiru. Modern astronomers have observed gravitational anomalies beyond Neptune, suggesting the presence of a massive unseen planet. Dubbed Planet 9 or Planet X, it eerily mirrors the Sumerian Nibiru, which they claimed had an elliptical orbit that brought it near Earth every 3,600 years. The timing of historical jumps in human development? It aligned suspiciously well. According to legend, as Nibiru approached Earth, the Anunnaki would return. Some think they never left. Others believe they're watching, waiting. What did they look like? Relics suggest beings 3-4 meters tall, with elongated skulls and high foreheads, features mimicked by ancient civilizations who bound the skulls of their elite. They wore ornate robes, had light skin, and luminous eyes. Their leader was Anu. His sons, Enki and Enlil, managed Earth's operations. The Anunnaki might have left behind more than just myths, hidden knowledge, lost technology, even genetic markers that still echo within our DNA. The idea is unsettling, yet alluring, that our creators may return, that we are not the pinnacle, but the product. And here's another twist. Some researchers argue that humans don't even belong here. In the book, Humans Are Not from Earth, anomalies in our biology are explored. Why are we uniquely vulnerable to sunlight? Why do we suffer chronic back pain? Why are childbirths so difficult? Every other species fits perfectly into Earth's environment. We arguably do not. Could it be because we're hybrids? Part Earth, part something else. From gold mines to rocket ships, from caves to satellites, our species has always been driven by something deep and inexplicable. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe ambition, or maybe, just maybe, it's a buried memory of where we came from and who made us. So next time you look up at the night sky, remember, the answers to humanity's origin may not lie beneath our feet, but far above our heads. And the Anunnaki, their story isn't over. It may be just beginning.
So, check out this creature. What do you think this thing is? Is it a plant, an animal, or maybe even some kind of wild fungus? At first glance, this fossil could pass for any of those ancient life forms. And honestly, scientists have been scratching their heads over it for over 150 years. But now, it looks like we might finally be cracking the case on this unknown species discovery. A long time ago, during the Devonian period, plants were just starting to grow on land. The tallest trees were only a few feet high, and animals hadn't even evolved backbones yet. Back then, massive natural towers up to 26 feet tall and 3 feet wide, looking like branchless cylindrical tree trunks, were rising from the ground. Hey, what a contrast with trees back then. When scientists first discovered fossils of those towering organisms, they were totally confused, as these strange prehistoric creatures didn't look like anything they'd seen before. Some thought they were weird cone-bearing trees. Others guessed they might be underwater plants like giant seaweed or lichens, which are partnerships between fungi and algae. The mysterious objects received a name, Prototaxites. When scientists studied them up close, their internal structure reminded them of a bunch of different things. They couldn't believe a 20-foot-tall fungus or algae could be real, but that's what the fossils showed. Then most scientists decided that Prototaxites were giant fungi. But still, something didn't feel right about it. In 2007, they decided to finally get the Prototaxites mystery explained and ran a chemical test on the fossils. So they looked at the types of carbon inside them and compared them to regular plants from the same time. If Prototaxites were plants, the carbon ratios would match, but they didn't. That means Prototaxites weren't plants, and they received carbon in a different way, not by photosynthesis, but probably more like fungi do. But then again, they looked nothing like the mushrooms we know and love today. Prototaxites were giant, likely the largest living things on land at their time. And even if these strange prehistoric creatures were some fungi of their sort, then it's weird they don't have any living relatives today that would resemble them. So, if we put all this together, it looks like Prototaxites are an entirely different and previously unknown life form that didn't leave any offspring. Now, Prototaxites aren't the only unclassified organisms on Earth. About 600 million years ago, there were no fish, no sharks, no crabs. Just simple life forms like algae and bacteria drifting through calm, shallow seas. But some seriously strange creatures, completely unlike anything we see today, lived among them. They looked like underwater ferns, stood perfectly still, and absorbed nutrients straight from the water. These bizarre life forms were rangeomorphs. They ruled the oceans that were thick with nutrients back then. So rangeomorphs didn't need mouths, eyes, or muscles to survive and just soaked up whatever they needed. Some of them were as small as a finger, and others grew as tall as 6.5 feet. But as Earth entered the Cambrian period, the oceans became much more competitive. Fast-swimming creatures with limbs, eyes, and jaws showed up and ate the same food faster, and maybe even ate the rangeomorphs themselves. The chemistry of the oceans also started to shift, and the nutrient-rich waters became more like today's oceans, where food floats around in particles that active animals scoop up. So the rangeomorphs vanished forever, but scientists still find their fossils all over the world, preserved in ancient rock. They had an incredible fractal design, a pattern that repeated itself at every level, from the smallest branches to the full body. Using fossil clues, researchers built 3D computer models of what rangeomorphs looked like. They found out that these strange prehistoric creatures filled their space in a nearly perfect way. They were like optimized living sponges. But scientists still can't agree on where exactly rangeomorphs fit on the tree of life. At first, they argued over whether they were plants, animals, fungi, or something completely different. Now, most agree they were primitive animals, though they were so different that they might deserve their own unique branch, what scientists call a clade. And then there was Dickinsonia, another prehistoric creature that was so strange that scientists couldn't even agree on what it was for nearly 100 years. Some thought it was a giant single-celled amoeba. Others thought it was a type of lichen, or maybe a failed evolutionary experiment. This bizarre life form lived about 558 million years ago, long before dinosaurs, sharks, or even insects showed up. After many years of studies, Australian researchers finally got proof that Dickinsonia was an animal, and possibly the oldest one scientists have ever found. They solved the mystery thanks to really well-preserved fossil fat molecules stuck in the rock near the White Sea. These molecules were a type of cholesterol, the kind of fat found in animal cells. If cholesterol is present, it almost certainly came from an animal, sort of like animal DNA. Dickinsonia lived millions of years earlier than scientists had previously thought, and didn't look anything like modern animals. It had no head, no mouth, no arms, no legs, and definitely no organs. It was oval-shaped, like a giant pill bug or flattened jelly bean, with weird ridges running across its body. Some were tiny, but others grew up to 5 feet long, the size of a person. It didn't swim or walk, but was just lying on the seafloor, soaking up nutrients from the water or absorbing stuff through its skin. It was tricky to identify because most fossils came from high-pressure rock, where heat had destroyed all the delicate organic stuff scientists needed to study. To get to the good fossils, researchers had to rappel down 300-foot cliffs, dig out huge blocks of sandstone, throw them down, wash them, and then repeat the process. And inside one of those sandstone slabs was the fossil that changed everything. That helped finally confirm that Dickinsonia was an animal, which proves that complex animal life existed before the Cambrian diversification, where tons of new animals with bones, eyes, and limbs suddenly appeared. Scientists think the spot where they found these fossils might hold more clues about ancient life. For a long time, scientists had no clue what other group of ancient life forms, slime molds, were. These weird jelly-like blobs that pulse and ooze on rotten logs and forest floors aren't fungi like mushrooms, though people thought they were for years. It turns out they're more like amoebas, squishy, single-celled organisms that can move around. There are over 900 species of slime molds all over the world. You'll find them in soil, leaf litter, and especially on decaying wood. Scientists found them trapped in amber from 100 million years ago, and it looks just like modern slime molds. Scientists still know very little about how slime molds interact with other species, what role they play in ecosystems, or how they think without a brain, nerves, or a control center. But somehow, they can make decisions and adapt to their surroundings. That makes them a lot like social insects, like ants or bees, where no single bug is in charge, but the colony still works together as a smart group. Even without brains, scientists have trained slime molds to solve mazes just by responding to chemicals and learning from their environment. One way these organisms learn is through a process called habituation. It's sort of like how you get used to cold water after jumping in a lake, or stop noticing an annoying buzzing noise after a few minutes. That's your brain helping you tune out something harmless. Some slime molds can do this too. If they get in nasty conditions, like salty, dry, acidic environments or chemicals, they'll avoid them at first. But if there's food on the other side, they'll eventually get used to it and push their way through. And if you let slime mold go dormant and wake up a year later, it still remembers how to deal with salt. They even seem to be able to decide where to go based on where they found food in the past. With more and more unknown species discoveries, scientists can paint a better picture of Earth's biological past.
Night enveloped the desert above Heracleion. A group of archaeologists moved through the labyrinth of sunken ruins, illuminating their path with powerful flashlights. Suddenly, one of the researchers, Dr. Martin Hale, stopped in front of a temple wall. He carefully brushed away a layer of sand and discovered a strange bas-relief. A woman holding a creature with an unusually elongated head and enormous eyes. "This can't just be a stylized depiction of an infant," whispered his colleague, Alice Carter. "The Paracas skulls in Peru have similar shapes. Could this be evidence of hybrids?" The question remained unanswered, but the mystery of Heracleion continued to intrigue scientists. Theories ranged from ancient cults to contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations. However, biologists established that elongated skulls could be the result of artificial cranial deformation, a practice common in ancient times. No DNA analysis has shown traces of non-human genetics. Meanwhile, in another part of the solar system, the Viking 1 probe transmitted an image to Earth of a rock formation on Mars resembling a human face. The photograph instantly became a sensation, fueling conspiracy theories. "It's just pareidolia," astronomers stated. "The human brain is wired to recognize familiar shapes in random forms." Decades later, when NASA sent more advanced spacecraft, images confirmed that the face on Mars was merely an ordinary hill, with shadows creating the illusion of facial features. However, proponents of the ancient Martian civilization theory insist that the truth is being concealed. No less mysterious are the artifacts of the Maya civilization. Their bas-reliefs depicting beings resembling astronauts, their complex astronomical calculations, and myths of gods descending from the heavens suggest possible contact with extraterrestrials. Some researchers associate Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, with alien beings. However, historians remind us that such imagery appears in many cultures and may carry purely symbolic meaning. In Scotland, on Arthur's Seat Hill, children stumbled upon 17 miniature wooden coffins with tiny figurines inside. The origin of these remains unresolved. Were they ritual offerings, connected to the murderers Burke and Hare, who sold their victims' bodies for medical research, or simply children's toys mistakenly perceived as something mystical? Some theories suggest they could have been a form of symbolic burial for souls who never received a proper grave. Others believe they were connected to an ancient superstition meant to ward off evil spirits. Another hypothesis suggests they were linked to an old Scottish practice of making talismans for protection against supernatural forces. The Antikythera mechanism found off the coast of Greece is another ancient enigma. This intricate device, over 2,000 years old, turned out to be an astronomical calculator ahead of its time. Studies revealed that the mechanism was used to calculate planetary movements and eclipses, proving the advanced knowledge of ancient Greek science. Many researchers now believe that similar devices might have existed, but no other examples have been discovered. Recent images from the Perseverance rover uncovered mysterious square structures on Mars. Geologists attribute them to natural crystallization and erosion processes, but UFO enthusiasts are convinced they are ruins of ancient constructions. The formations bear a striking resemblance to rectangular patterns seen in some ancient Earth structures, further fueling debates about potential past life on the Red Planet. In Germany, during excavations near Marburg Castle, students discovered a pocket sundial. The miniature device, several centuries old, amazed researchers with its precision and craftsmanship. Who owned it? Was it part of monastic heritage, used for prayers on a strict schedule? Experts believe that such sundials were rare and expensive, likely belonging to high-ranking individuals or scholars deeply engaged in astronomy and mathematics. Yet one of the most intriguing discoveries remains the Sabu disk, a 5,000-year-old artifact from Egypt. Its purpose remains debated. Some believe it was a ritual object, while others think it had a technical function, possibly part of an ancient machine. Some engineers speculate that its shape suggests it could have been part of a primitive flywheel or a component of an unknown mechanism. Certain studies suggest it could have been related to liquid movement or even served as a part of a lost mechanical system. Despite extensive research, its true function remains an enigma, adding to the ongoing fascination with the technological capabilities of early civilizations. The world is full of mysteries. Every solved enigma raises new questions. Were these artifacts merely the result of human ingenuity, or evidence of contact with forces we have yet to understand? As new discoveries emerge, the past continues to challenge our understanding, reminding us that history